You know it's this. Take a perk and talk it and see. Money swollen like sis. They done perfected the kid. Got a billion who take on my hate. Nothing better. Pull out the rope I just spit. I know we got $1 million. The devil, they shit ain't not cheaper than
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 5th part of What If Deku Enters Hazbin Hotel. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of MaxX69 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Shortly after that, the flames vanished, and so did Izuku, making Inko think that her son successfully entered hell. When the ring of fire faded away, our dear hero looked around and came to the realization that he was inside the house of his father, in the small hall of his home to be exact. As he observed his surroundings, his auditory organs picked up the sound of old-fashioned, vintage music, playing from the gramophone his father owned in the living room on his right side. Once both he and Shadow got the attention of the music, Izuku moved his head and body to the right side with pure excitement, hoping that due to the vintage melody playing in the living room, his father was inside the room as well. Once our young protagonist moved his head in the direction of the living room, in the red armchair, he could witness the red hair, the 2 black antlers, and the red-colored, black-tipped deer ears his father acquired, thus confirming that he was indeed in the living room, with his shadows observing him as he reads some kind of book in his hands. By seeing the presence of his father, Izuku, with his tiny legs, began to run towards his father, opening his mouth for the purpose of gaining his demonic parents' attention. "Daddy!" Izuku beamed as he rushed in the direction of his father with Shadow, causing Alastor to look up from his book, turn his head, and set his upon his only child with his old friends, making his grin grow wider when he noticed Izuku. "My dear sweet boy," the radio demon called, lifting the needle of the gramophone with his right hand, getting up from his seat, turning his body towards his son, crouching down, and opening his arms wide, offering his child a hug, which was the exact thing he did when he reached him. "It is so delightful to see you," he stated as he wrapped his arms around his son's body, returning his child's gesture while his shadows greeted Shadow by surrounding him, and each of them wrapping themselves around him one after another, with Alastor's shadow being the first in the line. After a few, father and son broke their hug, with both of them witnessing one another after that and the cannibalistic serial killer starting a conversation between himself and his son. "Now, tell me, how was your week like? I am sincerely hopeful that you were not picked on by bakugou." Alastor wondered as he observed his son with his everlasting wide grin. "No, Daddy, I was not," Izuku lied with a tiny bit stuttered voice, flattening his ears and tail a little bit, and not wanting to reveal the truth to his father, thus not having the desire to upset him, which was meaningless due to his father noticing his lie instantly just by the tone of his voice. But despite this, Alastor didn't reveal this for one single reason: to not make his son feel bad and kill his spirit full of excitement towards Christmas. After this, Izuku changed back to his original, joyful self, straightening his ears and tail, raising his right hand, and showing the present he received to his father. "Look what I got from Santa, Daddy," our young protagonist requested from his demonic parent, presenting his brand new all-might figurine to him. "That's a really nice gift, my boy," Alastor remarked, observing his son's new toy with his well-known smile on his face, "and as it seems to me, you're quite fond of it." "Yes, Daddy," Izuku declared happily, "I really like it." "That's good to hear," the radio demon responded. Then an idea appeared in his mind, making him remind himself of something that both was connected to, and was really important for his son at this time of the year. "Speaking of presents, Santa Claus had visited me yesterday and shared the information of you behaving like a good child this year. So he left a present here for you and asked me to give it to you," the radio demon declared, explaining the situation of the present like this due to him not wishing for shattering his son's heart by telling him that Santa does not exist and he was the one who got the gift. At the moment the radio-loving overlord let this statement of his known, our young protagonist's eyes became as starry as the night sky from pure excitement, causing him to be able to barely stand still from it. "Really?" Izuku inquired excitedly as his smile widened from the growing joyfulness inside his body. "Of course, allow me to present your gift for you, my boy," Alastor announced, laughing delightfully at his joke, with it being followed by the laughter of an imaginary crowd. After he finished his laugh, Alastor raised his right hand into the air, touched his right thumb and right middle finger together, and made a snap with them, allowing a medium present box to manifest in his hand. The box itself acquired a red color scheme and was sealed at the top, with it fixed to the lower part of the present box with a well-tied bright red-colored ribbon. After the box appeared in his hand fully, Alastor lowered his right hand and moved it in front of his son's face, allowing him to have a chance to take his present. "Here, my boy, take it," Alastor offered, holding the present in front of his beloved child in his right hand. "I'll hold your little toy until you unwrap your present," he said, placing his left hand in front of his son and opening it, allowing him to give his figurine to him. Izuku didn't need to be told to do so. After giving his All Might action figure to his father, he took the box out of his father's hand in an instant and began to unwrap it while all the shadows, including Shadow, observed him in the process. First, he carefully untied the ribbon on the box, and after that, as a second move, he lifted the top of the box, allowing himself and all the shadows present in the room to take a look at what was hidden inside the gift. And when they did, both Izuku's and Shadow's eyes shot their eyes wide in surprise by what they saw. Inside the present, they could witness a red-colored, normal-sized book with a giant, red pentagram on it, with the title of the book, which was written under the pentagram, saying the Encyclopedia of Voodoo. Although it was a little bit weird for Izuku to get this type of present at first, it didn't matter to him that much, because at the moment he saw the book, he immediately jolted towards his father and gave him a big, warm hug in pure delightfulness. "Thank you, Daddy," Izuku remercied happily, being grateful for the gift. "You're welcome, my boy," the cannibalistic serial killer said, returning his son's hug with his own, wrapping his arms around him while the shadows observed them with joy, with Shadow even joining their hug by carefully wrapping himself around the father and son duo, not wanting to disturb their sweet moment. After a few seconds and after Izuku's shadowy companion unwrapped his body, thus freeing them from his grip, they separated themselves from one another, breaking their hug. Then, Alastor positioned his left hand with the All Might figure in it in front of his son, letting him take it back. Izuku extended his right hand in the direction of his father's left hand, while holding his newly obtained voodoo book in his own left hand, and grabbed the All Might action figurine, taking it out of his father's hand. Shortly after that, Izuku turned his body around while looking at his father and beginning to move his legs, building up speed in the process. "Come on, Daddy, let's go over to Mello. I want to show her my new figurine and my new book," our young Cambion announced enthusiastically as he started to rush towards the direction of the entrance of his father's house with Shadow, being so excited that he couldn't wait for his best demonic imp friend and her mother to visit him and his father. "Oh, I would really love to, my boy, but unfortunately, it is not possible," Alastor stated as he stood up, making his son and his son's shadowy friend stop at the doorstep of the living room. "What?" Izuku questioned in shock as he and Shadow turned around and looked at his demonic parent. "Why, Daddy?" "Well, my boy, it is due to a business meeting that I, Miss Rosie, and some friends of mine attend at this time every year," the radio demon explained, then continued. "And as unfortunate as it is, I must not miss it," he finished, not telling his son that the meeting he plans to have with the rest of the overlords was about the upcoming annual cleanse, which was about to happen in 6 days. Hearing his father's reasoning and getting the information that he was unable to spend this day with him, Izuku instantly became really upset, even reaching the edge of crying, lowering his ears and tail, moving his head downwards, and witnessing the floor with sadness, with Shadow placing his right hand on his master's left shoulder in a comforting manner. Seeing his son in this gloomy state, Alastor couldn't resist but lose from the size of his signature smile a tiny bit and feel ashamed of himself for 3 reasons. 1. For making his son sad. 2. For being incapable of being with him on this special day. And 3. For him not planning ahead this meeting with his son, like getting someone to look over him. As he thought about this, an idea came into being inside his mind that would benefit both his only child and a certain old friend of his by him and Izuku meeting each other for the first time, making his smile return to its original form. After this idea was complete, he opened his mouth full of yellow-colored sharp, pointy teeth. But worry not, my boy, Alastor added, causing his son and his shadowy friend to look at him. I have the perfect person to look after you, he declared as moved his right and performed a snap with his fingers. Then, out of nowhere, a sudden light green began to emit from the left side of the living room, causing our young overlord, his shadowy friend, and his father to look at the cause of the light, with the former two going back inside the room in order to observe the light, and with the cannibalistic serial killer already knowing 100% what was its cause. And when they did, they saw something that both our dear hero and his shadowy helper didn't expect. At the source of the light, which quickly vanished shortly after they turned their heads towards its direction, they could see a well-made poker table being placed, accompanied by a few bar chairs around it. But this was not the most surprising thing for Izuku. The most surprising thing for him was that someone was occupying one of those chairs, and as he observed him, Izuku found the sinner's design both a little bit strange and a tiny bit interesting. The demon appeared to be an anthropomorphic animal, a cat to be exact, judging by his ears and tail. His fur was top-colored, overlaid with white on his face, torso, feet, and upper arms, which Izuku was not able to see due to the demon showing his back to him. The insides of his ears were white as well, decorated with a red tip at the point and a red heart in the center. A black tuft of fluff protruded from each, thus creating the appearance of small hearts. He had a darker shade of top encircling his, mimicking spats, which of course, just like in the case of his ears, Izuku couldn't witness thanks to the sinner not facing him. The demon's tail was top and long, ending with a large spray of plum-like fur or feathers which were dark pink with black and white stripes, with Izuku not capable of deciding which was it exactly. The demon obtained yellow-orange hearts underneath the paws on his hands. The wings of the anthropomorphic cat demon were large and red, with dark top on the undersides. The undersides of his wings were decorated with black stripes which featured red and white roulette wheel dot markings. The outside of his wings were ornamented with more black stripes, which wrapped around the joints and ran around a row of white roulette wheel dots. The only attire the sinner possessed was a black top hat with a red hatband and a golden button-like decoration, as well as a red bow tie and black suspenders over his shoulders. As Izuku and his shadowy companion observed the newly arrived demon, the sinner suddenly opened his mouth and began to speak, allowing our young cambion and his shadowy helper to hear his voice for the first time. "Ha!" the demon exclaimed as he put some poker cards on the table. "Read 'em and weep, boys, full who woo," the demon continued, but quickly stopped in his speech when the area around him started to turn red and become distorted, while a bunch of scary images, like the heads of creepy voodoo dolls and some voodoo symbols, coming into existence around him, making him turn around and observe his surroundings in surprise. "The hell? What the beep is this?" the sinner questioned as he tried to find the one who was responsible for disturbing him in his poker play, with his bad words being censored by the one who summoned him, not wanting his child to hear any bad words at this young age. Then, just as he began doing this, his eyes got the attention on the demon he could barely tolerate the presence of, causing him to become agitated at his mere sight. "You," he said furiously as he pointed at the radio demon with his left index finger. "Ah, Husker, my good friend," Alastor greeted as he approached the demon he referred to as Husker. "Glad you made it," he noted as he positioned his right hand on Husk's left shoulder. "Don't you Husker me, you son of a asterisk beep asterisk," Husk demanded frustratedly as he swept the cannibalistic serial killer's hand off of his shoulder, becoming surprised by the sudden censor of words the radio demon performed on him, thus ticking him off even more. "I was about to win the whole damn pot," he declared as he moved his body around and extended his right arm in the direction of the poker table, revealing to his boss the pile of poker chips and paper currency that was placed on the table, which fastly became distorted and disappeared into nothingness. "Good to see you too," the radio demon remarked as he witnessed his old friend, with him performing a facepalm. "What the hell do you want from me this time?" Husk queried as he witnessed Alastor. "Well, my friend, I'm going to have a meeting with the others soon, and I have no one to look out for my dear boy, so I took it upon myself to request your services," the radio demon explained as he placed his right arm on the anthropomorphic cat sinner's shoulders, making him open his eyes wider in shock. "I hope that's okay," he queried, continuing to look at his old friend with his well-known grin. After the radio-loving overlord finished his speech, Husk moved his eyes downwards, searching for the kid his boss mentioned. He didn't need to seek for the kid for too long. In the room, he could see Izuku, whom Husk judged to be around 4 years old by his appearance, standing next to the doorway, observing him with a worried expression, flattened ears and tail while being surrounded by his shadowy helper and Alastor's shadows. Then, Husk moved his visionary organs and focused his attention on the radio demon yet again, becoming more fed up in the process. "Are you beep me?" Husk inquired agitatedly. No, I don't think so," Alastor answered as delightfully as ever, thus earning the prize of Husk pushing him away from himself with both of his hands. "You thought it would be some kind of big beep riot just to pull out of nowhere. You think I'm some kind of beep clown?" The alcohol and gambling-loving cat demon questioned furiously as Alastor carefully removed the dust from his left arm with his right hand, then positioned his hands on his waist and looked at his old friend, not losing even one bit from his smile. "Maybe," Alastor noted, meaning both as a joke and a fact. "I'm not gonna be a beep babysitter for your kid," Husk clarified grumpily as he crossed his arms and watched Alastor casually walk in the direction that was at his left side. "Oh, come on, Husker," Alastor said joyfully as he teleported next to Husk and placed his right hand on his left shoulder, making him jump a tiny bit in surprise. "You're going to enjoy some quality time, my boy. After all, we don't want him to be alone, isn't that right, my boy?" he queried delightfully, turning his head and focusing his attention on his son, with Husk doing the same act, waiting for an answer from him. "Yes, Daddy," Izuku stuttered anxiously, slowly nodding by using his head in the process as he held his all-might figurine in his right hand and his newly got voodoo book in his left hand. "See, Husker? My boy doesn't want to be alone," Alastor stated, turning his head and setting his eyes upon his anthropomorphic cat demon friend. "Besides, my friend, I can make your time after you finish looking after my son, if you wish," Alastor whispered, telling this Husk so quietly Izuku couldn't hear it, offering his old friend some alcoholic beverage for his service, which, of course, due to him really loving any drink that was alcoholic, was enough for Husk to not decline his boss's offer. "Fine," Husk replied angrily as he looked away from the Alastor, accepting his offer, despite not having any mood for being a babysitter. "Splendid," the radio demon exclaimed in happiness, lifting his hand from his old friend's shoulder. "Now, if you excuse me, I have a meeting to attend to," he announced as he began to walk in the direction of the exit of his living room, thus getting closer and closer towards the door that could allow him to leave his living place by opening it and passing through it. But before he could do that, he approached his son and crouched down in front of him, looking him in the eye in the process. "Do not worry, my boy. I'll be away just for 2 or 3 hours," Alastor stated, assuring his son of the fact that he won't be away for a long time. "My dear Husker will take good care of you," he stated as he turned his head to witness his old friend, who instantly looked away from him at the moment of his remark. Then, the radio demon moved his head back to its original position, placing his attention on his son again. "In the meantime, try to be a good boy, okay?" he requested from his only child as he positioned his right hand on his head, ruffling his hair gently with it. "Okay, Daddy," Izuku responded, being gloomy due to his father leaving for a while and not being able to spend that much time with him. "Good," the radio demon said, removing his hand from his son's head and standing up from his crouch, going back to his original posture. Then, he turned his body to the right, and with casual steps, he got out of the living, with all of the shadows in the room aside from Shadow following him in the process. "Have fun," he exclaimed as he moved his body in the direction of the door that served as both the entrance and the exit of his house and walked towards while his shadowy helpers vanished from sight, transforming themselves into their shadow forms. Once Alastor reached the door, he touched its handle with his right and pushed it down, thus unlocking the door and allowing himself to step out of his home. And thus, he got out of his house, summoning his staff into his right hand and closing the door behind his back, thus leaving Izuku and Husk in the house. At the moment the radio demon stepped out of his house, the poker table and all the bar chairs became distorted and vanished from sight, making Husk fall on the floor, his butt touching the wooden floor first. "Fuck!" Husk cursed as he got up from the floor and scratched his butt with his left hand, witnessing it in the process. Then, after he lifted his hand from his butt, he turned his head back to its original position and set his upon the son of the radio demon, who, with his shadowy companion, set his eyes upon him with a worried expression, lowered ears, and a flattened tail, not saying any to the anthropomorphic feline demon, with him doing the same act. They continued to stare at each other awkwardly for around a minute or two, when suddenly Husk broke the silence by opening his mouth and beginning to speak. "Anyway, I'm gonna tell this to you once, kid, disturb me only when you have a problem or when you have something urgent," he stated grumpily as he observed our young protagonist and shadowy friend. "Other than that, leave me alone," the cat sinner demanded, not wanting to curse in the presence of a young child, with the previous curses that escaped his mouth being let out by him mostly due to his anger towards Alastor and him being a pain in the ass for him. Once he finished his statement, he rotated his body to the left and started to walk towards the armchair that was closer to him, while both Izuku and Shadow witnessed him in this act. After Husk got to the armchair, he descended his body and sat down on it comfortably, putting his left elbow on the left armrest of the armchair, pinching his nose with his left thumb and left index finger, letting out a tired sigh. "Fucking Christ," he profaned quietly, still wondering about whether he should have accepted Alastor's request or not. As he did this, he felt a sudden touch on his left arm, making him remove his fingers from his nose and look at the person who touched his arm. And once he did, he witnessed the 4-year-old Izuku standing at his side with his shadowy helper, holding his all-might action figure and his newly earned voodoo book in his hands, and acquiring the same anxious look on his face from moments ago. "What do you want?" he questioned as grumpily as ever. "Are you a magician?" Izuku queried worriedly. "What?" Husk asked dumbfoundedly, taken aback by this sudden question. "You have a hat that magicians have, and I thought you are one too," Izuku explained as he stammered in anxiety. "Well, I was one in my life, kid, but not anymore," the anthropomorphic cat sinner stated. "So, you can do magic tricks?" our young protagonist wondered anxiously. "Yes, I can do tricks," Husk answered, then continued. "Now, leave me alone, kid. I need to rest," he said, then moved his head away from the direction of the son of Alastor. At the sheer moment when Husk told him that he could perform tricks, all the worries Izuku obtained instantly vanished and were replaced with excitement and joy, making him straighten his ears and tail. "Can you do a magic trick for me?" Izuku requested with a sweet smile, starry eyes full of excitement. "Like hell I would, kid. I told ya, I'm not a magician anymore," Husk declared, raising his voice in anger a tiny bit. "Please," our young overlord asked kindly, with his starry eyes becoming cute doe eyes, observing the anthropomorphic feline with them. Despite him being an unfeeling, grumpy, alcohol-loving, gambling-addicted demon who hated everyone in both his mortal life and afterlife, including himself for being a cat sinner in hell, even Husk couldn't say no to the adorable young child that was Izukumidoriya. So, with the release of another tired sigh, he mentally prepared himself for what he was about to say, opening his mouth to let his decision known. "Fine, I'll show you some," Husk responded, saying yes to the request of our young cambion, causing our young protagonist to adopt a bigger smile on his face. "Yay!" Izuku cheered in joyfulness. "Thank you, uncle," he remercied nicely as he rushed to the middle of the carpet, catching the anthropomorphic feline demon off guard by suddenly calling him uncle. "I can't fucking believe I'm doing this," Husk remarked quietly as he pinched his nose yet again with his left thumb and left index finger, standing up from the armchair in doing so. Then, he followed our young overlord to the middle of the carpet, while Izuku kneeled down on the carpet and sat on his heels, thus performing a Japanese sitting, and placed his all-might figurine and freshly acquired voodoo book on the carpet, with the figure being positioned at Izuku's right side and the voodoo book being located at his left side. Soon after, Husk followed this act of his as well, sitting down on the carpet in the same way the son of the radio demon did and locating himself in front of him. Then, after he positioned himself comfortably, he put his right hand into the right pocket of his jeans, which was connected to the suspenders that kept it on him, pulled a small, silver coin out of it, opened his mouth, and began to speak. "See this?" Husk wondered as he held the coin up in front of him with his right thumb and right index finger, with Izuku nodding his head in understanding. Then, the alcohol-loving sinner bent his fingers and formed a fist, making the coin get into his palm. After that, he quickly opened his palm and showed it off to our young cambion, thus revealing that the coin vanished from his hand. "Ooh," Izuku exclaimed in awe as he witnessed the disappearance of the silver coin. "Where did the coin go?" I have no idea," Husk noted as he shrugged his shoulders. "But why is it?" he started, extending his left hand towards our young overlord and reaching behind his ear. "Behind your ear?" he inquired as pulled the same silver out from the back of his right ear, showing it off to our dear hero, who, after seeing the coin, adopted starry eyes from the astonishment he experienced. "Wow!" Izuku exclaimed in amazement as he and Shadow observed the demon who was taking care of him at that moment. And with this, the magnificent program of Izuku and Husk spending time with each other had finally begun, with the latter performing magic trick after magic trick and the former enjoying all the tricks he did in delight. And, to be honest, Husk didn't mind it that much. In fact, the old servant of the radio demon even enjoyed, although just a little bit. In his life, nearly no one appreciated his talents as a magician, making him become unfeeling and get even more addicted to alcohol and gambling, which he began to enjoy even more than being a magician, in order to cope with his depression, with the main reason of his addiction being that he was a true Las Vegas man who was introduced to gambling in a really young age. So when Izuku appreciated his trick, it was enough to make his heart melt just a tiny bit that was as cold as the Antarctic. This went on for around 20 minutes when out of nowhere, they heard a few knocks on the front door. At the moment their auditory organs picked up the sound, Izuku jumped up from the carpet and rushed out of the living room and in the direction of the front door, thinking it was the person behind the door, the person he was excited for and hoped to see once again, with him followed by Shadow, who picked his master's all-might toy and voodoo book with his hands and brought them after his master. In the meantime, shortly after his sudden leave, Husk put his cards down, which he used to perform a magic card trick for Izuku, and got up from the carpet as well, following the young cambion with causal steps and with a bored expression. When he got to the small hall, he looked to the left and witnessed the 4-year-old Izuku in front of the entrance, trying to reach the handle of the door. Seeing this, the anthropomorphic feline sinner approached the young child, getting behind him and making him and his shadowy helper turn their heads and look at him. Then, Husk moved his right hand and touched the door handle with it, pushing it downwards and opening the door, thus allowing themselves to find out who was the one who wanted to come inside. And when they did, Husk's eyes widened a little bit in surprise and Izuku's eyes became filled with happiness by who he saw. The one who was knocking on the front door of the radio demon's house was no other than the 5-year-old Mello, Izuku's first demonic and best friend, having a sweet smile on her face as she stood there. And she was not alone. She was accompanied by her mother, who was standing behind her daughter. Since they met each other at the playground a few months ago, Izuku and Mello grew closer to one another, with them even becoming close friends. But when they departed each time one of them or both of them left the playground, they became really sad for being able to spend just a little bit more time with each other. So, in order to not make her daughter experience sadness, Mello's mother allowed her daughter to visit her new friend every weekend and vice versa, although her doing this reluctantly at first due to Izuku being the child of the radio demon. But as Izuku visited her and her daughter time after time, she realized that not only Izuku was not evil and sadistic, he was rather really kind and was quite a sweetheart who really loved her daughter's company and vice versa, making her grow fond of Izuku as well. Mello's appearance didn't change much, wearing the same type of clothes and having the same kind of hairstyle that she obtained on the day when she met Izuku for the first time, with her attire consisting of a one-piece black dress with lots of red dots all over it and a pair of black stockings on her hooves and her hair being kept in a baby-styled ponytail. Meanwhile, her mother's clothing was different from the time our young overlord saw her for the very first time. On her upper body, she acquired a dark red shirt and black-colored jacket above the shirt, while on her lower body, she was wearing yellow jeans and white high heels. At the moment he saw his first demonic friend standing in front of him, Izuku's smile grew in size immediately, resulting in him opening his mouth and beginning to speak. "Mello," he exclaimed in joyfulness, throwing his hands in the air and greeting his friend with a smile on his face. "Zuzu," Mello yelled in delight, calling him by the nickname she gave to him and running to her best friend and embracing him with a big hug, just as she did every time they met each other. while Izuku lowered his arms and everyone observed their sweet moment, with Husk looking at them with his usual bored expression, Mellow's mother witnessing them with a kind smile, and Shadow setting his eyes upon them with a happy face, judging by the shape of his eyes. Once his imp friend hugged him, Izuku raised his head and looked at his demonic friend's mother, unlocking his mouth and starting to speak once he accomplished this act. "Hi, Mrs. Darkflame," our young Cambion told smilingly, saying hi to Mellow's mother and referring to her as Mrs. Darkflame. "Hello, Izuku," Mrs. Darkflame replied kindly, greeting our dear hero with her southern accent. Then, she moved her eyes and looked at the demon who was standing behind her daughter's best friend, becoming surprised by seeing that it was not the radio demon who was positioned there. "Oh, hello," she said, observing Husk with an awkward smile. "Sup?" Husk responded with boredom, witnessing Mrs. Darkflame with his causal, not showing any emotion expression on his face. "Where is Mr. Alastor? He's usually the one who's taking care of Izuku." The mother of Izuku's imp friend wondered, calling the radio demon by his name due to her and her daughter being among the lucky few who knew and were allowed to name him by his true name. "He needed to go to a boring-ass meetin', so now I'm the one who's looking after his kid," Husk explained, then continued, "The name's Husk, by the way." "Oh, I see," Mrs. Darkflame answered, processing the information she had just received. Then, she realized that she didn't do the first thing two people do when they meet each other for the first time. "Oh, I almost forgot. My name is Darkflame. Myrla Darkflame. It's nice to meet you," she said, introducing herself and extending her right hand in the direction of the anthropomorphic feline sinner, offering a handshake, which Husk accepted, shaking hands with her. After that, Mrs. Darkflame lowered her hand, continuing her speech once she finished this act. May I ask what kind of meeting Mr. Alastor needed to attend? I'm just curious," she queried. "I don't know, and I especially don't care," Husk stated grumpily, not giving a shit about Alastor's meeting while looking at Mrs. Darkflame. This was the moment when Shadow couldn't take it anymore. The scene his master and his imp friend made was too cute to resist. He wanted to become a member of their gesture too. So, he gently wrapped his pitch-black colored body around his master's and his imp friend's bodies, gaining the attention of the group and causing the young imp girl's smile to widen at his presence. "Shadow," Mellow cheered, releasing her friend from her hug and embracing Shadow with a hug, hugging him like a teddy bear, which Izuku's shadowy friend enjoyed really much. After a few seconds, the young imp girl released Shadow from her grip, observing him in the process, which was the exact thing the shadowy companion did. As she witnessed him, she noticed that Shadow was holding something in his hands, making her move her eyes downwards in order to get a better look at the items he obtained. And when she did, she shot her eyes wide in surprise when she saw the All-Might action figurine and the voodoo book in Shadow's hands, resulting in her adopting a curious look. "What are those?" she wondered curiously. "Those are my Christmas presents," Izuku stated as he looked at Mellow and Shadow. "What is Christmas?" Mellow questioned as Shadow extended both of his pitch-black hands in the direction of his master, signaling that he wanted to give them back to him. "It is a day when Santa comes and gives presents to every child in the world," our young protagonist explained as he took the All-Might figurine out of his shadowy companion's right hand and grabbed his newly acquired voodoo book with his left hand, thus taking it away from Shadow. "Really?" Mellow told, becoming excited by hearing her friend's explanation. "He's like Krampus." "Who?" Izuku wondered in confusion, with it due to him never hearing the name Krampus at that point in his life. "Krampus," Mellow repeated. "He brings presents to all the good imp children too," she clarified nicely, never losing her smile. "Yeah, he's like him," Izuku said, not knowing that the Krampus actually punished bad children. Then, he moved his right hand, showing off his All-Might figure. "I got this All-Might from Santa for Christmas because I was a good kid," he explained happily, showing up his toy. "Wow!" the young imp girl cooed with starry eyes, filled with excitement. "And my daddy gave me this voodoo book and said that Santa sent this to him and wanted him to give it to me," he explained delightfully as he presented his voodoo book to his demonic friend as everyone in the group observed him, while one excellent idea popped up in the young, innocent mind of Mellow. "Let's play with them at the playground," she suggested joyfully, being so excited that she could hold herself back. Okay, Izuku approved smilingly, nodding with his head. With this, both he and Mello started to rush down the few staircases and began to run on the sidewalk of the street happily, making their way in the direction of the playground they usually went on every weekend, while in the meantime, Shadow followed them in order to keep them safe. "Don't run too fast, honey, you're going to fall," Mrs. Darkflame shouted, warning her daughter and her daughter's friend in order to prevent them from falling and thus hurting themselves. But as usual, this remark of hers found deaf ears, with the two youngsters continuing to run in the street while being accompanied by Izuku's shadowy helper. But instead of being angry at her daughter for not listening to her, Mrs. Darkflame just let out a small sigh and formed a smile on her face as she witnessed the two young children having fun with each other. "They grow up so fast," she noted as Husk looked at Izuku and Mello running on the street as well. With this, their journey towards the nearest playground had started, with Husk and Mrs. Darkflame catching up to the two youngsters as soon as possible in order not to lose them from their sight. As usual, they took their causal route towards the playground, doing this in an attempt to avoid any type of board or building that advertised inappropriate things and activities that young children should never see. As they were on their journey, Izuku and Mello continued enjoying each other's company while Shadow proceeded to keep up with his master, and Mrs. Darkflame and Husk witnessed them in this act in silence, with Husk not having the mood and care to start a conversation. After around 30 minutes, they arrived at the gates of the park that gave home to the youngsters' favorite playground, causing them to jolt through its open gates and enter inside it once they got to it. Meanwhile, the ones who looked over them attempted to follow them, not desiring to lose them from their sights. Once all of them were in the park, with them being surrounded by beautiful green vegetation, they went on with their journey, with our dear hero and his first demonic friend leading the way with enthusiasm. A few minutes had passed, and they found themselves at a small, open area, where their final destination, the playground, was positioned, with it, as usual, being occupied by imp children, and even a few succubi children too. At the moment they set their eyes upon the playground, Izuku and Mello instantly ran towards the sandpit of the playground, got into it, and took over it once they reached it, while Shadow followed them and joined them in the sandpit as well. Meanwhile, the mother of our young protagonist's imp friend and the alcohol-loving cat-like sinner walked to the nearest bench and sat down, observing the two children as they appreciated each other's presence in delight. During their time in the playground, Izuku and Mello played with each other and with our young overlord's freshly obtained all-might, with them imagining themselves as heroes and Izuku talking to Mello about them and how cool the number one hero was, which the young imp girl listened to with curiosity and joy. Then, after our dear hero finished his speech about his favorite hero, they decided to check out his new voodoo book, opening it and reading and learning about voodoo symbols and their meanings. This went around for an hour until Mello got another brilliant idea, causing her, Izuku, and Shadow to rush back to the demons who took care of them, with Shadow bringing his master's belongings in his hands and Mello asking her mother to go to the nearby mall and make a visit to the Krampus there, which she allowed. Hearing her approval, the smile of the two youngsters immediately began to jolt in the direction of the exit of the park as the two adults in the group got up from the group and tried to keep up with them, not desiring to lose them from their vision. Once all members of the group got to the gate of the park that played the part of its exit and stopped in their tracks, a silly appeared in the young imp girl's head, making her focus her attention on our young overlord and open her mouth full of small sharp teeth to let her idea known to him. "The first who gets to the mall is going to be the first who sits into Krampus's lap," she announced gleefully, challenging her friend to a race and starting to rush down the street on the sidewalk while avoiding collision with other demons and sinners on the street, now running faster than before, probably due to the rising thrill and the excitement inside her body. "Okay," Izuku answered, running after his friend almost at the same speed as her while his shadowy companion followed him behind his back. Although Izuku didn't know yet, it was one of his worst mistakes that he accepted his demonic friend's little challenge. "Hey!" Husk exclaimed, then continued. "Kid, wait!" he yelled as he and MSR Darkflame rushed after the two young individuals and their shadowy guard, with the latter three turning to the left at the corner of the street. Shortly after they began to jolt after the children in order to not lose them from the sights of their visionary organs, but when they got to the corner and looked in the direction they saw Izuku, Mello, and Shadow head, they had no sight of them, causing them to shoot their eyes wide in surprise, making them become alarmed, and resulting in Mrs. Darkflame to grow worried for her daughter's safety. Shit, where did the kids go? The anthropomorphic feline demon wondered as he and Myrla Darkflame moved their heads left and right, trying to find any traces of our young Cambions, his best imp friends, and his shadowy helpers' presence. However, their search was short-lived due to something they would have never expected. As they looked around the area by doing the act previously mentioned, they heard a loud, cracking sound from the sky, causing not just them, but everyone in the streets of Pentagram City to look up. And when they did, they widened their eyes in pure shock by what they saw. The pentagram that was floating above the capital of Hell, the pentagram that served as the city's main defense, was broken, making everyone on the streets become struck with utter fear, including Husk and Mrs. Darkflame as well, knowing damn well the reason behind the cracking of the pentagram. But no, that couldn't be. It was too early. This event was supposed to happen in 6 days, and yet it was about to occur. But why? It always happened on the same day every year. But now, it came earlier. But why would they come down sooner this year? What could possibly cause them to do this? It just didn't make any sense. As Husk thought about this, the defensive pentagram continued to become more and more damaged, crack after crack appearing on it. In response, all the demons in the streets of Pentagram City vanished from sight, desperately searching for a hiding spot and getting cover there, fearing for their lives. As the citizens of the capital city of Hell disappeared from the streets, both Husk and Mrs. Darkflame looked at each other, with Husk opening his mouth and beginning to speak. "Go," he said to Mellow's mother as the pentagram became even more cracked. "Take cover somewhere safe. I'll get the kids." "I'll go with you," Messar Darkflame told anxiously. "No," Husk disagreed. "The only thing you're gonna do now is that you find a place for yourself to hide," he advised. "But my daughter," Mellow's mother started with extreme distress, fearing for her daughter's well-being. "You wanna end up as a stain on the ground and upset her?" the anthropomorphic cat demon questioned. "Then take my fucking advice, do not come with me," he suggested as the pentagram had become completely vanishing from the sky and causing them to take a quick glance on it. With them becoming even more stressed, "I'll protect her too," Husk stated as placed his attention on Mrs. Darkflame, then continued. "Now, get your ass somewhere safe, and do not come out until this is over," he recommended, trying to calm down Mrs. Darkflame as much as he could. Hearing this, although really reluctantly at first due to her motherly instincts and not wanting to abandon her daughter, Myrla realized this was the only way to solve this, with her acknowledging that even if she wanted, she was not capable of protecting her daughter from those things with all of her strength thanks to their special weaponry. So, with a worried expression, she turned around and ran back in the direction of the park as the servant of the radio demon witnessed her in this act, while she only hoped for one single thing: her daughter's safety. After she left, Husk moved his body and spread his red-feathered wings, preparing to use them for the act he was about to perform. "F my life," he cursed, then rose into the air, and with his wings, he flew away into one of the directions opposite to the one Mrs. Darkflame fled, thus beginning his search for the missing children and their shadowy guardians. As the alcohol-loving feline demon started his flight, at the location of the now destroyed pentagram, a large group of individuals, 50 of them to be exact, descended from the sky, observing the city from the air. Their appearance was nothing like the demons of Hell. All of the beings were humanoid and appeared to be females, obtaining feminine features like fully developed breasts or butts, similar to the ones an adult woman would have. They possessed horns at the top of their heads, above which they acquired a halo with a central gem and 3 smaller crystals on both sides, along with a pair of large wings on their backs. Their facial features were hidden from sight by an lead mask each of them had, with it being capable of showing various expressions. Their attire seemed to be uniformal, mostly having black, gray, and white as the attire's coloration, with the only exception being that some of the individuals' lead masks acquired a red coloration at the eyes and the mouth area. All of the individuals were armed with weapons, most of them holding spears that were made out of holy material in their hands. They were the beings that all sinners and all hellborn demons of the realm of suffering feared the most. They were the individuals who came down every year from heaven and performed an annual genocide in the Pride Ring, killing everyone in their sights who was outside the streets. And worst of all, they enjoyed it. The killing, the bloodshed, the torture, everything. They were the soldiers of the Almighty's realm, the exorcists, also known as the exterminators. As they witnessed the city from the sky, one of the exorcists flew forward, getting in front of the group. Her look was mainly the same as the rest of the exterminators, although there were some differences. Instead of being white, the color of her halo was black, with her right pupil obtaining the same color as well, which, in the case of the rest of the exorcists, was white instead of black, thus signaling that she had a higher ranking than the rest of the exterminators that were present there. The last visual difference in her appearance was her wings, which were striped instead of pale. Her weaponry was also different, with her having a sword created from holy material instead of a spear, with it being positioned on her left side. Once the exterminator got in front of the other exorcists, she moved her body and turned around, facing her fellow soldiers. "All right, soldiers, listen up," she ordered, making everyone in their group set their eyes upon her. "I'm going to explain the situation again," she said, then went on with her speech. "Our latest observations say that our target is in the city now, so this is the perfect time for us to strike. However, we only have time until the bell of the main tower rings and the defensive pentagram reforms, so we must be quick." The exterminator told, slowly flying from one side to the other as she expressed this. "In order to accomplish our mission as fast and efficiently as possible, we're going to form teams of 5 to cover more ground in the city," she announced, then continued. "Remember, Lord Adam had asked us specifically to complete this mission, so we must not disappoint him," she stated as she went moving left and right in the air with the help of her wings, reminding her fellow group members to this crucial information, with them agreeing with her remark. "We're free to use any form of force and violence towards the citizens," she declared, making her fellow soldiers become excited at the mere thought of them being allowed to hurt other beings that were not angelic. "But remember," she told, stopping in the middle and holding up her right hand and her right index finger, "we must not forget the main point of our mission," the exterminator stated, lowering her hand and turning around, showing her back to her soldiers and looking at Pentagram City. "Find the abomination and eliminate it," she finished, thus giving a clear permission to her soldiers to begin the mission. With this, the rest of the exorcists moved their wings, formed teams, and scattered all across the city, with the leader of the group joining one of the 10 teams as well, thus starting their search for the special threat they needed to take care of. Meanwhile, as the exterminator began their mission, Izuku and Mello went on running on the streets of the capital city of Hell, while they were watched over by Shadow, laughing joyfully and having so much fun while they were doing this act that they didn't the crucial fact that they got lost and failed to pick up the sound of the cracking and breaking pentagram with their auditory organs. They continued their lovely, silly race for around 10 minutes, when, as they passed by an alleyway, our dear heroine spotted movement from the corner of his left eye, causing him to stop in his tracks and take a quick look at the source of the movement, with his shadowy friend proceeding to do the same act as well, floating at his left side. Hearing her friend end his running, Mello quit her movement too, turning her head in his direction and witnessing him and his shadowy helper with her eyes. "Why did you stop, Zuzu?" the young imp girl inquired as she walked up to her best friend and to her favorite shadow. "The mall is not here," she stated as she got next to Izuku, observing him in the process. Seeing that he didn't focus his attention on her when she talked to her, she decided to move her head and set her eyes upon the alleyway, earning a glimpse of the location her Cambion friend was looking at, and when she did, she was quite surprised by what she saw. Inside the alleyway, they could observe what a normal alleyway had: a metal dumpster at the right side of the alleyway, some graffiti painted on the wall, a couple of posters on the walls, nothing out of the ordinary. The reason why it was special and why it made our young protagonist and his first demonic friend place their attention on it in the first place was that at the end of the alleyway, they were able to witness a group of 5 strange-looking, blackish, grayish-colored, curved-horned, winged beings that obtained some kind of white-colored, glowing, circle-shaped object above their heads, with the one being who stood in the middle having a black one above instead of a white one, and spears in their hands as well, with the one with the black object having a sword at her left side, forming a half of a circle, thus indicating that they surrounded someone. Recognizing this, due to their curiosity, both Izuku and Mello looked at each other, nodded their heads, and proceeded to quietly sneak to the metal dumpster, while Shadow floated after them in silence. Once they reached the dumpster and hid behind it, All three moved their heads and peeked out from behind the dumpster, focusing their attention on the group of individuals who were the main reason they went inside the alleyway, not knowing that the ones they desired to witness in their act were the biggest threat to the sinners of hell, the exorcists. But at the moment they did this, they were both taken aback and were startled by the sudden, painful scream of a sixth individual, meaning that it came from the demon those being surrounded, making our dear hero, the young imp girl, and their shadowy guardian to become terrified. Although they couldn't see it clearly, they were still able to witness the demon who was encircled by the exterminators and who let out this painful scream, with him sitting on the ground and leaning against the wall, acquiring numerous, burned, bloody injuries, which were inflicted by the exorcists on his body. The demon's look was nothing special. He was normal-sized, had a pair of pointy horns on his head, 6 eyes, and 4 arms on his body, with one of them missing due to an exterminator cutting it off as a part of his torment. His attire consisted of a row of spikes on his head, starting between his horns and ending at the back of his head, a black-colored, punk-styled sleeveless shirt that was ripped at the bottom area, thus revealing his belly, and dark blue trousers that were also ripped as well, mostly being like that at the thighs and at the end of the clothing. As he continued to let his suffering known, the exterminator who plunged the sharp end of her spear into the demon's right upper arm removed her weapon from the sinner's body, allowing another team member of hers to take her turn in the torture of that unfortunate demon, thrusting her spear into his right side, causing the sinner to experience even greater pain and making him release another scream of pain into the air, unsettling our trio even more as they witnessed the whole thing happen. This whole situation went on for 1 or 2 minutes, with the exorcists creating wound after wound on the demon, causing him to scream even louder from his suffering, which the angels listened to with delight, as our young overlord, his imp friend, and his shadowy companion observed the scene with bigger and bigger discomfort, until at one point, the individual in the middle lifted her right arm, signaling her teammates to stop what they were doing. "All right, that's enough," the leader of the mission and the whole angel group commanded, ordering her fellow to stop their act, making one of the exterminators get her spear out of the sinner's body, who was at the brink of death at this point. "You had enough fun for now. Now, we must focus on our mission," she declared as she lowered her right arm, upsetting her teammates with the fact they couldn't torture the demon anymore, but despite this, nodding and agreeing with the statement of their team leader. "Please, end me," the sinner begged as blood escaped from his mouth, being at the edge of dying, causing all the exorcists to set their eyes upon him. "As you wish." The main exterminator responded, then moved her right hand towards her sword, grabbed its grip with her hand, drew it out of its scabbard, touched its grip with her other hand, and raised it into the air, preparing for what she was about to do as our trio witnessed her in fright and fear. Then, with a swift move, she struck down with her weapon and cut the demon's head clean off, decapitating him and causing his head to fall down from his neck and roll on the ground, absolutely shocking and horrifying Izuku, Mello, and Shadow with her act. Demons. What a waste of time," the exorcist noted coldly as she observed the corpse of the dead sinner. By witnessing all of this happen, our main trio was 100% sure that they had no reason for them to be there anymore. So, in complete frightfulness, our young protagonist and his demonic friend began to walk backward as quietly as they could, with Shadow doing this by levitating, trying to leave the location without them being noticed. Unfortunately for them, moments later they started their escape operation. Their plan failed instantly when, as she was taking steps in the direction behind her back, Mello accidentally placed her left hoof on an empty plastic bottle, letting out a crushing sound as she stepped on it. At that moment they heard this sound. All 3 of them looked down in panic in order to witness what was the cause of this noise, and after they saw the empty bottle, they instantly moved their heads upwards, hoping that the beings they witnessed killing someone didn't hear this. Unfortunately, this was not the case. When they did look up and back at the entities, they froze in fear by what they saw. Those exterminators were not looking at the body of the deceased demon. They were looking at them. And as they did this, the leader of the operation realized that the small, green-haired, deer-eared boy was the one who they needed to get rid of. So, after getting this information inside her mind, she adopted a serious expression and opened her mouth, beginning to speak once she unlocked it. "Kill them," she ordered as she drew her sword out and pointed at the group with it, terrifying them even more with her demand. after she announced her demand. Using her wings, one of 4 exorcists that were in her team and were below her ranking immediately dashed forward and positioned her spear in front of her body, with the sharp end of the weapon pointing in the direction of our dear, flying towards him, his best imp friend, and shadowy friend with immense speed and clear murderous intent. Recognizing the dangerous situation, Shadow had to act quickly. He threw his master's belongings into the air with a quick move. He pushed his master and his friend out of the way right at the moment when the exorcist was about to pierce her spear through Izuku's body, saving him and Mello from certain death. As he witnessed the angel stopping in her advance, getting a little bit of relief due to knowing that he saved his master's life, Shadow turned his head and focused his full attention on our young Cambion, just to check if he was alright physically. But when he did, he became horrified by what he observed. Despite saving his master from dying, there was still damage inflicted on his body. On his right shoulder, the clothing was ripped and a bleeding wound was foundable, thus showing that Izuku was injured. Izuku felt all of it. All the agony caused by the wound and all the burning pain around his injury, which was made by the holy weapon of the exterminator. It was so painful for him that he couldn't resist crying as he placed his left hand on his wound. "Zuzu!" Mello cried out in worry as she set her eyes upon her injured and crying friend. By seeing his master's state and acquiring pure anger towards the one who hurt him, Shadow instantly changed his form and transformed into his defensive self, with his green aura turning into red, his green eyes transforming into red ones, his antlers becoming larger, and his short claws changing to long, sharp talons. Then, once transforming fully, he moved his head and placed his attention on the exorcist. As she was about to attack our young overlord and the young imp girl again, Shadow flew to her and performed an attack on her face, inflicting claw after claw on her mask and buying time for the duo to escape. Witnessing the opportunity, Mello helped her friend up as fast as she could, and after that, both of them ran out of the alleyway, getting out of the vision of the exterminators. Once seeing that his master and his demonic friend had fled from the location, Shadow stopped his attack, reverted back to his original form, picked up his master's all-might toy and voodoo book, and floated after the escaped duo, him vanishing from the area as well. After them, the main exorcist demanded with a serious tone, "We must not lose sight of the abomination," she declared, ordering her fellow soldier to go after the fleeing trio. With this, all the exorcists in the team proceeded to leap into the air by using their wings, and once they saw our main trio running on the street, they flew after them, beginning their deadly chase. Meanwhile, as all these events occurred, on the other side of the city, in a big building, inside a reddish, pinkish-colored room that had windows at both sides and a pair of lamps on the ceiling, around a long, large table, all overlords of the Pride Ring were placed. Attending to the meeting, Alastor talked about his son, with their meeting, which was about how they should exploit this year's upcoming extermination day more beneficially, actually being near to its end. Observing from the point of view of someone who had entered the room through its door, the sitting order was the following. At the left side of the table, closest to the corner of it, the leader of the cannibal colony, Miss Rosie, was positioned, wearing her casual yet elegant attire, and the seat in front of her being occupied a large, dinosaur-based female overlord named Miss Zilla, who was one member of Lucifer's inner circle, and had long green-colored hair that was pink at some ends of her hair, long green sclere, black, narrow pupils, pink skin, a tail with long green-colored feathers at the end, and distinctive claws on her feet, similar to a velociraptor or any kind of dromosaurid. Her attire consisted of a little bit of dark pink-colored jacket, which had light green fur at the neck and at the wrists, a black shirt that exposed her belly area, and obtained a huge, toothy smile with long green teeth at the breasts as a decoration, and black jeans. At her left side of Rosie, her good friend and the radio demon himself, Alastor, was sitting, having his microphone in his hand and acquiring his well-known toothy grin. In front of him, at the other side of the table, a male overlord was located who had eyes that only consisted of light blue-colored sclere, a head that resembled a skull burning in a light blue-colored fire, with the head obtaining a pair of large antlers that were curving downwards. His clothing included a bluish, blackish-colored suit, which didn't have anything under it, thus revealing his strange torso that allowed everyone see his torso, which was the same light blue flame that enveloped his skull, jeans with the same color as the suit, and majestic shoes. Next to Alastor, a female sinner, with her having white hair which was kept in a ponytail hairstyle called the socialite, eyes with red sclere, white irises, and black, narrow pupils, 2 small black horns at the top of her head, and white skin. Her attire contained red glasses on her face, a white lab coat, black gloves that started between her shoulders and elbows, and black jeans under her lab coat. She was the only demon present in the room who didn't have someone sitting in front of her. She was Odette Carmine, one of the 2 daughters of Carmilla Carmine. At her left, the next overlord was not other than one of, and the only female member of the 3 V's, Velvet, who was leaning on the table with her elbows and had quite a bored expression on her face at the moment. She was a slim demon with slightly gray-brown skin. She had long, curly hair tied into large pigtails which are velvet on the tips and pale blue at the ends, with white swirl streaks on her pigtails and on her bangs with black hair ties holding her hair up. Her eyes acquired white irises and red sclera, and she seemed to be wearing white clown eyeliner with burgundy eyeshadow and black lipstick with a strip across the center of her mouth. She wore a black turtleneck crop top with 2 hearts on the chest and a dark bluish-gray coat with a fur collar that had red hearts. She had loose blue and red striped pants with a heart-shaped buckle bat, and heeled blackish shoes with white puffs on the top. She also obtained 2 skull earrings on each side of her head and fingerless black striped evening gloves, with the alternate colors of the right and the left being white and red, respectively. In front of her, at the other side of the table, Clara Carmine, the second daughter of Carmilla Carmine, was obtaining a chair, acquiring white puffy hair, a pair of tiny black horns on her head, a little bit brighter skin tone than Velvet, red sclere, white irises, black, narrow pupils, and black lipstick. Her clothing involved a black sleeveless shirt, dark gray jeans, and black shoes. At the end of the table, which was closer to Velvet, the organizers of this whole meeting were sitting, with a screen with statistics about the number of deaths at the annual cleanse each year projected by a projector, which was connected to the ceiling behind their backs. At the left, a male, spider-like overlord named Zestial Mord, a tall demon who stood around 7.4 feet and was another member of the King of Hell's inner circle. He obtained dark gray skin, 4 pupilless eyes with greenish-yellow sclere, and sharp fangs in his mouth. His mouth had a bright greenish-yellow coloration. He had a very lean frame with a pencil-thin neck and arms, and he sported long claws that were sharpened to a point. He acquired 2 other large arms that were attached and stretched across his cloak, as his hands laid at the ends of his cloak, while 8 smaller spider legs stuck out from the front of his suit in the formation of a spider. He wore a lopsided, black top hat with a feather attached to it featuring yellow and red stripes, with a skull on the brim. He was also wearing a large black widow spider as a pendant or bow tie, with green stripes on its legs. Most of his body remained concealed in an organic, black cloak that stretched out from his back, which was capable of opening up with a wide span similar to that of the hood of a cobra, and contained numerous red eyes across his yellow skin. Underneath his cloak, he obtained a dark purple suit, a maroon-colored undershirt, and long shoes with maroon, white, and black stripes. Next to him, the second arranger of the meeting and final member of Lucifer's inner circle, the female overlord labeled as Carmilla Carmine, was occupying a seat. She was a tall and slender demon, adorned with gray skin and red eyes accentuated with white irises. She had long white hair, which was kept in a shape that resembled horns with sleek black stripes. She acquired large hands, with fingers extending up to an impressive 5 feet in length, each tipped with long and sharp claws. She was clothed in a black and white dress, with the black color occupying the most places on the dress with the exception of the arms and the lower part of the dress, which covered her butt entirely, where the white color dominated from between the shoulders and elbows to the end of the fingers, black jeans, and elegant black high heels that were sharp and pointy at the end. In front of the organizers, at the other end of the table, the television-headed overlord, Vox, who was wearing his casual clothing, and the director of the adult film studio of Hell, the moth-based male overlord, Valentino, were sitting, witnessing the group with bored faces. Valentino was a tall, slender demon with grayish lavender skin and cerise pink eyes, over which he was wearing gold-rimmed heart-shaped sunglasses with cerise pink lenses. He had a wide mouth full of sharp, red-colored, pointed teeth, and possessed a single golden fang that sat at the left part of his mouth, being positioned far from the center of his mouth. He acquired long black-heeled boots, a floor-length vivid red coat, which featured a white fur trim at the wrists, as well as black and white striped fur trim down the coat center front to the bottom hem. He also obtained a large fluffy white collar decorated with small red love hearts wrapped around his neck which plumed up from his coat's break line. His coat was pinned with a gold chain and gold love heart-shaped brooch fastenings at the melons. He accessorized with a matching vivid red top hat that had a wide, asymmetrical zebra print hat band. 2 appendages sprouted from the band of the hat. On his left, 1 black spiked antennae, and on the right side, a large black and white striped feather. As he and his business partner kind of boyfriend, who was acquiring a chair next to him, witnessed the whole group with boredom, Carmilla opened her mouth and began to speak, revealing her feminine voice which, despite being womanly, still demanded fear and respect from the sinners and the hellborns of Pentagram City. "So, are there any questions?" Carmilla wondered, questioning the overlords present in the room about if they had something to ask about the things they discussed in the meeting. "Actually, yeah, I have one," Vox stated, causing everyone in the room to set their eyes upon him. "For you, Radio Demon," he said, placing his vision on the cannibalistic serial killer. "Ah, for me?" Alastor cooed, speaking to his rival in this matter to tick him off due to him being disgusted of him and his modern technology. "How kind of you, my friend." "I'm not your effing friend, but whatever," the TV demon remarked, then began his speech. "So, some months ago, when you were your little cockroach helper, who was that little sinner behind you?" he queried as he leaned on the table with elbows, put his hands together, and placed his head on them. "Care to elaborate?" "Oh, my dear Vox, I assure so that you have nothing to do with that," the radio demon replied smilingly while trying to contain his rage towards Vox for him asking about his son. "But why is that? Are you hidden something or what?" Vox asked, becoming a tiny bit frustrated due to his rival not answering his question properly. "No, my friend, of course not," Alastor stated, making Vox angrier with his reply. "Then why are you not answering my question?" the television-headed overlord inquired. "I have already told you, my friend, you have nothing to do with that," Alastor declared, never losing his iconic smile, while his old friend, Miss Rosie, realized that the reason why her friend was not answering the TV demon's question was due to that, despite him not knowing that, he was asking Alastor about Izuku, his only son, making Rosie understand Alastor's behavior and her becoming a little bit angry as well for Vox asking about our dear hero. "Now, listen here, ya outdated piece of shit." Vox started furiously, lifting up his head from his hands and pointing at the radio demon with his right index finger, thus beginning an argument with him. As they went on with their argument, which consisted of Vox repeating his question, Alastor answering it not properly on purpose, Vox becoming angrier at this, and repeating the cycle over again, Velvet just turned her head away from them and witnessed the window at the other side of the room with boredom, waiting for the meeting and all this bullshit to finally end. But as she proceeded to do this, she saw a particular winged, black-colored body dash from the sky and pass by the window, making the overlord of social media shoot her eyes wide in surprise. But right after that, she became really excited immediately due to something interesting and exciting finally happening, resulting in her standing up from her seat and beginning to walk towards the window in order to get a better look at the situation that was unfolding outside the street, causing Vox and Alastor to stop their arguing and making everyone to focus their attention on her. "What's the matter, baby doll?" Valentino wondered from Velvet, who didn't respond to his question as she approached the window. When she reached it, she moved her head forward to the glass part of the window and looked outside, observing the streets of Pentagram City and the situation that was going on there. And when she did, she adopted an even greater smile on her face in joy as she witnessed a bunch of exorcists outside, killing and torturing sinners on the streets. "Guys, check this out," she exclaimed in delight. The extermination day had come earlier this year, Velvet announced as she continued to look at the exterminators doing their jobs, causing every overlord in the room to widen their eyes in absolute surprise by telling them this. "Oh, just look how they are when they disembowel someone." "How is that possible?" Carmilla wondered as she stood up from her chair and walked up to the overlord of social media, checking that if she was telling the truth or not. "The annual cleanse should happen 6 days later, not now," Miss Zilla stated as she too got up from her seat and approached 2 female overlords at the window, desiring a view of the events on the streets as well. What an unexpected event. This had never occurred before. Rosie noted, then continued. What do you think about this, Alastor? She asked with a smile on her face as she turned her head in the direction of her old friend, waiting for an answer from him. But at the moment she placed her attention on him, she instantly lost her grin and was rewarded with a sight she really rarely witnessed in her life in hell. And when she did, she knew that nothing good was about to happen. The big smile of the radio demon, the smile he was most known for, and the grin he was most recognizable of, had disappeared. Not only that, his joyful smile was replaced with an expression showing pure, actual worry, making Rosie, after a little bit of thinking, realize the one reason why Alastor was looking like that. Izuku, the young and sweet cinnamon roll she met, was out there, resulting in her becoming worried for our young Cambion as well. Knowing that his dear boy was out there due to their usual program being spending time in the park at the playground with Mello and her mother, the radio demon grew extremely anxious for his son's safety and well-being. Causing his fatherly instincts to go off, put his staff on the table and stand up from his seat, covering his anxiety with a small smile and causing every overlord to focus their attention on him. I apologize in advance for doing this, my dear friends, but something important came into my mind that I must take care of, Alastor explained as he quickly positioned the chair back to the table and grabbed his staff with his left hand, starting to walk towards the exit of the room with rapid steps. But the meeting isn't over yet, Alastor, Carmilla declared as she observed the radio demon almost getting to the door. I must go because my dear boy is still out there, the radio demon stated as he opened the door with his right and ran out of the room, with Rosie rising from her seat and rushing after him, leaving all the overlord in the room totally confused with his out-of-character behavior. After 1 or 2 minutes when he reached the exit of the building, Alastor opened the door and jolted out of the building, losing the little smile he used as a cover and getting out to the streets and earning a glimpse of the situation that was unfolding there, allowing him to see the dead bodies of sinners lying on the ground lifeless. As he witnessed the scenery, Rosie caught up to him, causing her to set her eyes upon the bodies of the deceased demons, making her even more worried for Izuku's safety. Oh no! The head of the cannibal colony said anxiously as she set her pitch-black eyes on the bloody aftermath of the exorcists' murders. I must apologize for asking this favor from you once again, but I need your aid, Alastor announced as he poofed his staff away and snapped with his fingers, summoning his own and 5 other shadows in front of him. You have to help me find dear boy. I promise you, and I will reward you with all the souls you want to devour and torture. But you must help me find my boy first. He's everything to me, the radio demon requested from his shadowy helpers, confessing his fatherly love for his son to his shadows. Hearing his order, in response, all the shadows nodded with their heads in understanding, turned around with their bodies, and flew away into separate ways, looking for our young protagonist, his demonic friend, and his shadowy helper as Alastor witnessed them leave with an anxious expression on his face. Don't worry, Alastor, Rosie said, comforting her friend and getting next to him. I hope so, my dear Rosie, I hope so, Alastor replied, looking at the leader of the cannibal with a worried yet hopeful expression, being for her trying to calm him down. Then, both he and her moved their legs and set off into one of the many directions on the streets of Pentagram City, thus beginning their search for our young overlord, his best imp friend, and his shadowy guardian. At that point in time, our main trio had been running away from the deadly team of exterminators, successfully dodging and avoiding attack after attack, resulting in the exorcists becoming more and more agitated and ticked off. As our main group continued their flee from their attacks who were following them in the air by using their wings, 2 of the exorcists got to them, landing nearly next to each other and positioning themselves in front of them, blocking their way. Witnessing this, Shadow acted quickly, moved his hands and threw his master's all-might action figurine at one of the exterminators' faces and tossed his master's voodoo at the other exorcist's mask, distracting them for long enough to allow his master and the young imp girl to slide under the exterminators, thus escaping their blockade and let them go on with their escape on the now not used concrete road, with Shadow following them as soon as he could after he gathered his master's belongings. This was the moment when one of the 2 exorcists had enough. She was totally fed off being ashamed due to her and the other being so incompetent that they couldn't end 2 small children's lives. So, in order to finish their mission and redeem herself for her incompetency, she tightened her grab on her spear, lifted her hand in which she was holding her weapon, aimed with it, and threw it into the air, doing it with a trajectory that would surely hit at least one of the youngsters. The exterminator didn't have to wait for so long to see the results. As they ran away from their pursuers, Mello moved her head and looked back at the ones who were chasing, checking that if they resumed to follow them or not. But at the moment she did this, before she could even process it, she saw the spear flying towards her with such speed it was inevitable for her to avoid. And then it happened. The spear struck her. Fortunately, the holy weapon missed her head, thus not killing him, but it still caused significant damage. As the spear hit her, it seriously injured her left eye, causing it to obtain a huge vertical cut in the middle, and making Mello fly forward a little bit and roll on the concrete road thanks to the impact of the spear, shocking both Izuku and Shadow with this. Mello, our dear heroine, cried out in fear of losing his best imp friend as he and his shadowy companion rushed to her side in order to check her state. When they got to her, they witnessed the bleeding, large injury on her left eye that prevented her from opening it, with the wound due to the effect of the holy spear making the young imp girl experience a burning pain around it. "Are you all right?" Izuku wondered in panic as he and Shadow helped her sit up on the ground while she covered her black-colored blood-leaking injured eye with her left hand and tears rolled down her cheeks. But as he and his shadowy friend aided the young imp girl, all the 5 exorcists landed in front of them a few away, with the exterminator who hurt Mello in the first place being the one who was the closest to our main group, making our trio to look at them with fear. After they touched the ground, the exorcist nearest to our young protagonist, his demonic friend, and his shadowy helper leaned downwards and picked up her tiny bit bloody spear from the ground with her right hand, beginning to approach our main group slowly as they couldn't do anything, just observe her getting to them closer and closer with step after step. Once the deadly angel finally got to them, the exterminator grabbed her holy weapon with both of her hands, lifted her weapon up, and prepared herself for the act she was about to accomplish. Realizing what was about to happen, Izuku hugged his best imp friend tightly in fright and vice versa, both of them closing their eyes in utter fear, not wanting to witness their end as Shadow looked at the angels with pure fury, not being able to protect his master and his demonic friend anymore. Then, the exterminator struck down with her weapon, causing our young Cambion and the young imp girl to pull each other even closer, shutting their eyes and screaming in terror, with Mello even extending her left arm towards their soon-to-be executioner with her open-palmed left hand in attempt of protecting her and her friend. While the main exorcists formed a smile on her face as she set her eyes upon the situation with satisfaction, knowing that they succeeded with another mission and didn't disappoint their leader, the Archangel Adam. But then, something shocking happened that no one, literally no one, would have expected. Out of Mello's left hand, a huge blast of fire was shot, taking all the exterminators aback in absolute surprise and causing the main and 2 other exorcists to leap to the side, dodging the fire. But the other 2 deadly angels were not that lucky. When the huge flame touched their bodies, their clothes and the feathers on their wings incinerated instantly, making them experience immense pain as the fire consumed their skin and flesh, causing them to drop their weapons and scream in agony. A few seconds later, the flame vanished, allowing everyone present in the scene to witness the really badly burned, smoking, dead bodies of the exterminators lying on the grounds, shocking the remaining exorcists and our main trio, with the members of the latter having absolutely no idea what just happened. However, their observation was cut short by something swooping down from the sky and picking them up from the road, flying back high into the air once they were in the being's hands. For a short moment, Izuku and Mello closed their eyes from this sudden act, opening them slowly after a few seconds. When they did this, they shot their eyes wide at the moment they saw that they were in the air, being kept there by black-furred hands that our young protagonist was sure he had seen before. They became even more surprised when they heard the voice of the one who took them into the air in the first place. "Ya kids got yourselves into a hell of a shitshow," the demon remarked with a serious yet bored tone, causing our trio to move their heads and witnessed that not other than Husk, the anthropomorphic cat sinner who served as our young overlord babysitter at that day, making our dear heroine's eyes to produce tears of relief by seeing him. "Uncle," Izuku exclaimed as a small smile popped up on his face and the previously mentioned tears flowed down on her cheeks like a waterfall. "Good to see you two in one piece, kid," Husk answered. Then with his eyes, he attempted to do a quick rundown on both our young Cambions and on the young imp girl's physical state, checking if they had any injuries, which of course they acquired. "Hold on, kids, I'm gonna get yet a doctor ASAP," he announced as he went on with his flying, while Shadow tried to get out of the alcohol-loving cat demon's grip in order to give more space for his master and his best imp friend, resulting in him and the two other members of the group to fastly look at him, with the former doing it with panic. Oi, stop! You're gonna fall," he exclaimed while becoming panicked. But he was not capable of stopping the Shadow from doing this act, because at the moment he said this sentence, Shadow escaped his grip, causing him to just simply float and fly next, catching Husk by surprise. "Oh, right." Husk noted a tiny bit dumbfoundedly thanks to him completely forgetting that Shadow's main method of movement was levitating. But he was taken out from his surprised state when a winged figure darted down between him and Shadow, descending from a higher part of the sky and missing them completely, making all members of the group look up to the location where the attack came from, thus allowing themselves to set their eyes upon the remaining 3 exterminators chasing after them, with the third who made that unsuccessful attack joining back to them, causing Husk to obtain a serious look on his face and resulting in the other 3 members of the group, even Shadow, acquiring a fearful expression. "Get them," the main exterminator shouted in anger, pointing her sword at our group. "Kill them and avenge our sisters." "Hold tight, kids, this is gonna be a bumpy ride," the anthropomorphic feline sinner declared, flapping his wings and speeding up, which their pursuers did as well, trying to get to the one location where they were the most safe from those heavenly monsters as soon as possible, the radio demon's residence. Thus, the deadly chase between the exorcists and our main group had begun while they flew over Pentagram City fast, not noticing that one of Alastor's shadows, a certain imp mother, and a particular tiny, female cockroach sinner spotted them and their current situation, resulting in the former going and reporting back to its master, and the latter too leaving the alleyways that served as their hideouts and beginning to follow them while containing worry for their beloved nephew's daughter's health. During their chase, the exterminators proceeded to attack Husk and our youngsters on numerous occasions, with all the attempts, fortunately, failing miserably thanks to Husk dodging every attack perfectly. This went on for around 5 or 6 minutes, until at one point, one of the 2 exorcists who held spears raised her right hand and threw her spear at the gambling-addicted cat demon, now hitting him and piercing through his right wing, with the holy weapon stopping in midway. "Fuck!" Husk yelled in agony as he felt the enormous pain in his wing as he struggled with his flight, causing him to lose a tiny bit from his hold of our young overlord and his best imp friend, which was enough for Mello to let go of her grip and fall towards the ground, making her scream in fearfulness as she did this, shocking our group and allowing the exterminators a chance to kill her in midair. "Mello!" Izuku exclaimed in horror as he witnessed his friend descend in the direction of the ground. "I'm on it," Husk stated, moving his wings and swooping down in an attempt to catch and save Mello from certain death, while the exorcists did the same act, although for the opposite reason, which was, of course, not other than ending her life. But as all of this happened, another unexpected event occurred that no one saw coming. As she fell towards the ground, out of the young imp girl's back, 2 dragon-like wings sprouted that were middle-sized compared to her size, being perfect to keep her in the air, making Mello's dress have 2 large holes in the back area, causing her to observe her black-blooded, newly grown limbs with a mixture of pure surprise and awe, and resulting in the exterminators accidentally miss their attack. As the young imp girl looked at her new wings, Husk caught up with her and grabbed her with his left hand, holding her under his right arm next to her friend until he pulled the holy spear out of his right wing, trying to ignore the huge pain he experienced and tossing the weapon away once he successfully removed it. Then, he carefully placed Mello under his left arm and held her with it, attempting to move his wings to become faster and take the youngsters and himself higher in the air after he was done with the previous act. But unluckily for them, they were not going higher. In fact, due to Husk's injured wing, they were descending, with their speed of coming down a little bit increasing with almost every passing second. But every bad had some good in it, because, as they got closer and closer to the ground, Husk noticed their destination, Alastor's house, with his visionary organs, being just a few houses away from their location. Recognizing this, Husk had to act fast. He turned in the air, showing his back to the ground, and hugged the two children to his body tightly, with our young Cambion and his demonic friend doing the same, and Shadow even wrapping his pitch-black body around the trio in an attempt to keep the kids in place even more. "Brace yourselves," Husk declared as he covered the children with his wings, shielding them from the upcoming impact. And then it happened. They impacted with the solid surface, but instead of hitting the ground, they landed on the roof of a house next to the radio demon's home, causing Husk to hurt his back and right leg badly and making his body bounce from the house's roof to Alastor's residence's roof. Thanks to the speed his body hit the other house's roof and roll on the roof, falling on the grassy ground and bringing down some tiles with him as well. Shortly after Husk touched the ground, he slowly moved his wings and uncovered the children, revealing that aside from their wounds caused by the exorcists, they were completely fine, making him a little bit relieved by seeing this. "Are ya all right?" he queried as he set his eyes upon the two youngsters, with them looking at him and nodding by using their heads in response. "Good," the anthropomorphic cat sinner replied, then continued, "Now, go inside. I'll catch up to ya," he requested, with Shadow unwrapping his body from the trio's bodies and our young protagonist and the young imp girl getting up, turning around and running in the direction of the front door, with Shadow leading the way, while Husk stood up from the ground and began his way towards the door, limping with his right leg in the process. When the entrance of the house was noticed by his visionary organs, allowing him the scene of Shadow putting down Izuku's all-might figure and voodoo book on the ground and extending his right hand towards the door handle as our young Cambion and his best imp friend observed him in this act, with his auditory organs. Husk picked up the flapping sound of multiple wings getting closer and closer to their location, making him look up to the sky and witness their approaching chasers, causing him become stressed and alarmed yet again. "Open the door and get inside," Husk demanded as he quickened his steps towards the door, resulting in Shadow unlocking the door and opening it wide, allowing every one of them to get inside. Once every member of the group was inside, Shadow, Izuku, and Mello instantly jolted inside the living room, with Husk going after them as fast as he could after he closed the front door fully. After he got to the living, accompanied by our dear heroine, his demonic friend, and his shadowy helper, he hid behind the wall that was positioned at the right side of the doorway. But as our young protagonist and his best imp friend were about to let out a sigh of relief due to them thinking that they finally lost their pursuers, the anthropomorphic feline demon pulled them close to himself with his right hand, placing his left index finger in front of his mouth, signaling them to be quiet, confusing them with this sudden act. However, their confusion vanished when they heard 3 thuds from outside, making them indicate that 3 somethings landed outside the house, causing them to become enveloped with fright thanks to them already knowing who were the ones who got to the house. Shortly after they heard those thuds, they heard the handle of the entrance slowly being moved downwards, resulting in the door being opened leisurely with a creaking sound. Once the door was unlocked completely, thus revealing that the one who opened it was not other than the main exterminator, the exorcist looked around and stepped inside the home of the radio demon, closing the door behind her back, preventing anyone from escaping. Then, with an evil smile on her face, she drew her sword out and started to approach the living room with slow steps, knowing the fact that they were hiding there due to the droplets of blood Husk's wounded wings left behind led her that way. As the angel patiently got closer and closer to their position, which was indicated by her shadow and the sound of the wooden floor creaking under her feet, Husk prepared himself to protect the 2 children at any cost, even if it would cause him to die. But before any of them could do anything, suddenly, the bell of the city went off, surprising them and signaling all the exterminators, including the main one, that it was about time for them to leave. With a frustrated look on her face, the main exorcist looked in the direction of the living room. Then turned around, ran to the exit of the house, unlocked it, and flew out of the house, regrouping with all of her fellow soldiers above Pentagram City and going back to heaven with them before the defensive pentagram of the capital would have reformed, which it did right after they left. Knowing that it was now 100% sure that this event had finally ended, Husk let out a tired but relieved sigh, sitting down on the floor and letting go of his grip on the 2 youngsters, with them observing him with a relieved expression as well. But, unluckily for them, this short moment of peace ended quickly when they heard someone barge through the door and enter the building, causing the alcohol-loving cat sinner to become alerted once again and making our young overlord and the young imp girl acquire fright yet again, fearing that their pursuers came back for them. Fortunately, this fear disappeared immediately when they heard a familiar voice that sounded like someone was speaking through an old-fashioned radio. "Izuku? Izuku, where are you?" Alastor questioned in worriness, being so anxious for his son that he called him by his name. Hearing his father's voice, Izuku rushed out of the living room and jolted into the small hall of the house, with him being followed by Mello, Shadow, and Husk. When he got there, he saw that not only his dad, but also his aunt, Miss Rosie, and Mrs. Darkflame in the scene as well, probably being together due to their search for them. Seeing his father, Izuku instantly began to run towards him, as the tears of happiness and relief rolled down his face, with Mello doing the same act with the exception of her jolting towards her mother. "Daddy," Izuku exclaimed as he ran towards his demonic parent, gaining his attention. "Izuku," Alastor yelled as he rushed towards his son, being relieved that he was still alive. "Mommy," Mello shouted as she jolted in the direction of her mother, making her set her eyes upon her daughter and causing her to cry as well in relief. "Mello," Mrs. Darkflame exclaimed as she ran towards her daughter. Once both of the parents got to their children, they crouched down to their level and embraced them with the biggest hug of their lives, with the kids returning the gestures as well. "Thank Lucifer, you're all right," the radio demon declared as hugged his only child. "They hurt me, Daddy. They hurt Mello, too," Izuku stated as grabbed onto his father's suit. "I was so scared, Daddy." "I know," Alastor said, then continued, "But don't worry, my boy, I'm here now, and I promise you that I'll never leave you like this ever again," he announced, blaming himself and feeling shame for being so thoughtless and careless for abandoning his son as Rosie and Niffty witnessed the whole scene with sorrowfulness, and his dear boy hugged him even tighter and cried even harder after he said this. "After the incident, my dad and my auntie treated my and my uncle's injuries instantly, and Mrs. Darkflame took Mello to the doctors. Fortunately, her eyeball didn't suffer significant damage, but due to the wound, she lost her vision in her left eye. They also checked why she had grown wings and why she could use fire suddenly, but, as far as I know, they found nothing," Izuku stated in the present as he took off the right side of his coat and pulled up the right sleeve of his dress shirt while all the demons in the room listened to his story in complete silence, showing off the place of the scar of the wound he got on the day of the incident as he looked at it. "This scar is the only thing that reminds me every single day what happened on that day. I still don't know why those things were in hell at that time," he told as he pulled down the sleeve and placed the right side of the coat back on his body. "I have nightmares about that incident to this day. Sometimes, me and Mello escape from them, but sometimes, we don't. It doesn't matter how much time passed, they still continue to haunt me," our dear hero said as he thought back to all the horrible nightmares he had over all the years. Then, he moved his head upwards, looking at the ones present in the room. "This is how I met my uncle," he declared, finishing his tale as he observed all the demons in the room, with them just looking at him in complete silence as he ended his story, confusing our young champion with their strange act. "What?" Out of nowhere, Charlie leaned forward in the blink of an eye and gave him a huge, comforting hug, catching him off guard and making his face really light up. "Charlie?" Izuku questioned as he flattened his ears and tail and his head became as red as a tomato. "I'm so sorry you had to live this," Charlie said as she hugged her friend and cried her eyes out in absolute sadness, causing his blush to instantly vanish when he heard what she said. "Dude, that's really fucked up," Angel remarked, regretting his joke from earlier and developing even more love for Husk after he heard all the things he did to protect him and his imp friend from dying, while Sirpentious was already thinking about testing one of his weapons on an exterminator for them messing up his precious pupil. "You don't need to say sorry, Charlie. It's not your fault," Izuku responded as hugged his royal friend as well, patting her back in the process. "In fact, I should be apologizing for acting strange around Miss Vaggie," he stated as the Princess of Hell released him from her nice gesture and looked at him. "Why?" Princess Charlotte wondered as she wiped tears away from her face. "Well, Our young overlord started as he scratched the back of his head. It's mainly thanks to how much she resembles those things, he said, then continued. It's not like I blame her for this or anything like that, Izuku declared, holding up his hands and attempting to avoid misunderstanding. I know it's mainly my fault and even understand why she behaved towards me like. I too wouldn't so happy if a half-demon half-human who is the son of the feared radio demon just came into my house and wanted to stay here every weekend, he said, then lowered his hands and went on with his speech. But I couldn't help but shake when I'm around her. Because every time I look at her face, I see them, Izuku explained as he looked at the floor of the hotel woefully, resulting in everyone in the room, even Sirpentious, showing sympathy for him. Witnessing how sad our young protagonist was, Fat Nuggets stood up in his owner's lap and jumped down from his lap, surprising him. Fat Nuggets, what are ya? The gay porn star inquired as his pet pig made his way to our dear heroine and climbed to the sofa with a tiny bit of difficulty, positioning himself between him and the princess of hell and looking at him. Oh, hey Fat Nuggets. What do you? Izuku started with a tiny smile, but was cut short when, in order to comfort him, Fat Nuggets just walked onto his lap and sat down in it, surprising our young protagonist. What in the? He queried as the pet pig snuggled to his and witnessed him with his pig eyes, oinking happily, causing Angel to chuckle at this and making Charlie coo by seeing this. Out of jealousy, and in an attempt to cheer up Izuku, Kiki jumped from the table to the sofa, climbed up to our dear hero's head, nuzzling her own head to his head while purring, with Izuku even scratching her chin gently, then observing Fat Nuggets with a jealous look, with the pig doing nothing, just cutely setting his eyes upon her, resulting in Charlie barely being able to hold herself back from the cuteness she saw. Fortunately, both of the pets' plans were successful, thus cheering up Izuku once again, turning to his usual, joyful self. However, this wholesome scene ended quickly. A demon who they didn't expect to be there opened her mouth and began to speak, thus showing off her location. It's not your fault, Vaggie declared, coming out from behind the wall she was hiding while holding 2 bags of food, causing everyone to look at her, with Izuku doing it with panic. Miss Vaggie, it's nice to see you, Izuku said, greeting the female moth sinner nervously. Sorry for asking this, but how much did you head from my story? All of it, Vaggie replied as she approached the group, making Izuku even more nervous with her answer. Oh, okay, our young Cambion answered, afraid that now she was going to something him after she heard his tale. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. I'm not a monster, Vaggie noted as placed down the 2 bags on the floor. Besides, they hurt me too, the moth-based demon stated as she turned and began to take off her shirt, causing Izuku to become immediately flustered and wanting to stop what she was about to do. Miss Vaggie, what are you? Izuku started in panic, but stopped in his speech when he saw the numerous amounts of scars that were similar to his on her back, shocking her and everyone in the room with the exception of her girlfriend, who had known about it for a while now. It happened in the first year I came to hell. I was careless and it almost cost my life. I only managed to escape with the skin of my teeth, Vaggie explained, then pulled her shirt down to its original form and turned around, walking to our young protagonist. So, if you're wondering, no, I don't think the story you told us was a lie. I know, because I experienced it from first hand, she said, then continued. And as I listened to your story, I began to think that I was maybe a little bit too harsh with you, she told with as she got to the sofa and set her eye upon Niffty, who instantly understood her request from just looking at her and got off from the furniture, thus allowing her to sit down on it, which was exactly what she did, while surprising not just Izuku, but Charlie too with her behavior. Don't get me wrong, I still trust you one bit, she clarified, but by seeing how happy you make Charlie with your, I realized you really want to help us, and I'm ready to start again with a clean state, she explained, lifting her right hand and offering our young overlord a handshake. What do you say? Izuku just stared at Vaggie in shock, not believing what she had just done and said. She not only revealed that she was also attacked by those things, but she also said that she acknowledged his help for Charlie and actually is kind of grateful for it. It was like she was a completely different person for him, and due to all of this and him meeting a kind of nice side of her, he could not refuse her offer. So, with the choice of action already decided in his head, he lifted his right hand and touched her hand, shaking it. I'm in," Izuku answered as he shook Vaggie's hand, doing the mature thing of accepting her offer. "Good," Vaggie said, then pulled Izuku closer to her by his hand, looking him in the eye. "But if I see one single attempt of you trying to sabotage the hotel or hurt Charlie, I will sure you regret it," Vaggie warned, threatening him. "Understood?" "Why, yes, ma'am," Izuku replied anxiously. "All right, it's settled then," Vaggie remarked, forming a small smile on her face, with Izuku being even more surprised by seeing her smile for the first time. But despite all the things that happened between them, he couldn't resist but also, knowing that there was finally no tension between them anymore. As all of this occurred, Charlie couldn't help but also morph a grin on her face, being proud of her girlfriend for losing her hatred for Izuku and knowing that they finally settled their differences. And thus, at last, after 9 whole months, there was nothing that could prevent them from trying to rehabilitate sinners and accomplish her dream as one true team. The Morningstars, the royal family, the highest and most powerful family in all of hell, and the family that has absolute control over the realm of suffering. The head of this family is none other than Lucifer Morningstar, the fallen angel who rebelled against the Almighty himself and fell down to the fiery pits of hell eons ago, now ruling over hell as its one true king. The second most powerful demon behind Lucifer is Lilith, the first sinner who was created by God from the same dust as her first and previous husband, the first man ever made into existence, Adam, whom she had to serve as his wife for all eternity. It looked like this was her fate, until one day, in the Garden of Eden, she met a certain archangel, who was the most beautiful and most powerful angel amongst angels, and fell in love with him sharing the emotions towards her as well. As time went on, they continued their relationship in secret, until one fateful day, while they were doing the good old birds and bees, Adam found out about them and their love, causing him to become enraged and to feel that he was betrayed. After what he witnessed, Adam went to the Almighty and reported everything that he saw to him. In response, God gave horns to Lilith to make her disgusting for her actions and banished her from the Garden of Eden, not allowing her to step inside it ever again, and thus not letting her see Lucifer. Hearing about the banishment of his one true love, Lucifer gathered his closest fellow angel companions such as Satan, Beelzebub, Mammon, Asmodeus, Leviathan, and Belphegor, who were angels at that time as well and were like a family for him, and were also fed up with the strict lifestyles they were allowed to in heaven, and rebelled against his father, resulting in him and his fellow angel friends to get kicked out of heaven, with Lucifer just for one reason, to reunite with his love. And now, the two lovers are together forever, with Lilith now controlling hell with her loving husband as his wife and the queen, while the 6 other fallen angels became the rulers of their own rings based on their sins, with Satan getting the ring of wrath, Beelzebub having the ring of gluttony, Mammon earning the ring of greed, Asmodeus obtaining the ring of lust, Leviathan acquiring the ring of envy, and Belphegor gaining the ring of sloth, while, unbeknownst to all of them, Adam has been plotting and waiting for the perfect opportunity to unleash his revenge on Lucifer and Lilith what they did. And last, but not least, the third and final member of this family is Charlotte Morningstar, the daughter of the king and queen, and the princess of hell, who always tried to achieve something that would make her parents proud. And now, at this time of her life, she attempted to accomplish her dream of redeeming sinners and getting them into heaven, thus stopping the yearly occurring extermination day once and for all. She knew this was not going to be an easy task, but she liked the challenge. She searched for everything: human habits, lifestyles, different time periods, every single thing for one single reason: to make the treatment of her future patients as effective as possible. In fact, on that Wednesday afternoon, when she visited her parents, this was the exact activity she was performing. Inside the palace of the royal family, in the giant main library, where numerous rows of large, long bookshelves followed each other, Princess Charlotte was sitting at a huge, well-made, dark red-colored wooden table with an opened book titled Human Habits During Different Holidays in her hands, and 2 towers of other human-related books at her right-left side, with the ones at her right being the books that were waiting to be unlocked by her, and the ones on her left being the ones she had already read. While not far from the books, a plate full of delicious donuts was placed, offering anyone in the room to take a bite out of those tasty delicacies. As she was focusing her attention on the book she was reading, Her two personal bodyguards, Razzle and Dazzle, approached her by using their wings while they were carrying a bunch of books related to humans that they struggled to hold in their hands due to the weight of the books. Both Razzle and Dazzle had similar red fur, long black and red horns, and yellow eyes with red irises. Razzle's eyes were reptilian-like with thin vertical pupils, while Dazzle obtained larger visionary organs with pupils that were round and circular. Both of them possessed dragon-like wings, and their tails were long with a tuft of fur at the end of each shaped into a point. Their hands had a close resemblance to hooves, and their cheeks acquired pink spots, as well as what appeared to be freckles located beside their eyes. Inside their mouths, Razzle had a normal-looking tongue, while in Dazzle's case, he obtained a more snake-like one. Razzle's fur was a light shade of red, while the stripe going down his snout was darker in comparison, whereas Dazzle's fur was the exact opposite, dark red with the stripe being a lighter shade of red. The only attire they acquired was a black and white suit and a red bow tie, sharing the coloration of their fur and body. As Razzle and Dazzle reached the table, they placed the books in their hands on the pile of books at the right, gaining the attention of the one they needed to guard. "Thank you, Razzle and Dazzle," Charlie remercied smilingly as she observed her guards, who smiled back at her when they heard his thank and saluted to her in a kind manner, being happy to help the Princess of Hell in anything she needed. Then, Razzle and Dazzle turned around and flew away in the direction they came from, going back to the bookshelves in order to find more books on the kind of topic Princess Charlotte needed. After her guards left, Charlie moved her head and placed her attention on her book once again, continuing to read with 100% focus and determination. She was so focused on her activity that her auditory organs didn't pick up the sound of footsteps getting nearer and nearer to her with every passing second, stopping and going silent once the entity got next to her. Then, the being opened her mouth and began to speak, revealing her presence to the princess. "Looks like you've got lots of work for yourself, honey," the individual remarked as she got next to Charlie, causing her to turn her head in the direction she heard the familiar voice coming from. And when she did this, she adopted a soft smile when she saw that the one on her left side was not other than her mother and the Queen of Hell herself, Lilith. Lilith was a gorgeous, slender, curvaceous woman with a height that was higher than her husband's and daughter's, standing approximately at the height of 6 feet and 6 inches, or 198 centimeters. She had pale skin, thin eyebrows and silver gray eyes, long black eyelashes, and extremely long, light blonde hair with thick honey blonde streaks reaching down to the floor. She also possessed a pair of long magenta horns on the top of her head, being capable of changing shape depending on the scenario. She sported a white pearl necklace around her neck, exquisite black high heels, and an elegant dark purple dress, which was the same piece of clothing she wore when they made a family portrait back in the early 1980s. Seeing her mother in her sight, the Princess of Hell, with the same soft smile she formed on her face, unlocked her mouth and began to talk, starting a conversation between her and her female parent. "Hi, Mom," Charlie greeted, saying hi to her mother, then continued. "Yeah, it's a lot, but I can handle it," she stated. "Is Dad still having the meeting?" she inquired, asking that due to her father being the king of all of Hell, the most of his days were spent with different meeting and other political stuff that was needed for him to control his kingdom without an issue. "Unfortunately, honey, he is," Lilith answered, confirming her daughter's guess. "He must be pretty bored and tired of it at this point." "Sure he is," Charlie remarked, knowing that her father really hated doing meetings. Then, she turned her head away from her mother and focused her attention on her book yet again, causing her mother to become curious about her act. "What are you reading?" the Queen of Hell wondered as she looked at the book her daughter was studying. "A book about human traditions around the living world," Princess Charlotte announced kindly as she witnessed and read the words in the book she was holding. "Did you know that there's a place called India and they have a festival named Diwali, where they eat traditional foods, shoot fireworks, and make lantern displays to celebrate good winning over evil?" she inquired kindly as she turned her head towards her mother. "No, I did not," Lilith replied with a motherly smile, hiding her concern about her daughter's dream with it. Then, Charlie moved her head and positioned her full attention on the book in her hands, going on reading it with concentration. Just as she began to continue this, her 2 small bodyguards came back from their repeated journey, carrying a bunch of other human-related books in their hoof-like hands and putting them down on the tower of books that was at the right, earning the attention of both of their superiors in the room, with the younger whom they had to protect at any cost rewarding them for their act with a sweet smile. "Thank you, Razzle and Dazzle, this should be enough." The Princess of Hell thanked as she observed her guards smilingly, then continued, "Go on, take a break. You deserve it," she declared kindly, allowing the two tiny demons to rest. In response, after hearing this, both Razzle and Dazzle nodded by using their heads with a smiley expression on their faces, and with the help of their wings, they flew off in the direction of the plate full of donuts, each of them taking one from the plate and beginning to munch on it when they reached it. Once Razzle and Dazzle started to consume their treats, Charlie moved her head away from their direction, and once again, she went on with the reading of her book, proceeding to memorize every piece of information it possessed. While she did this, her mother didn't act anything, just watched as her daughter read the book in her hands, still worried for her daughter due to the little protect of hers. And she didn't leave her concern unsaid for too long. So, with the intent of revealing her worry to her only child, she opened her mouth and began her speech, drawing the attention of her daughter. "Are you sure about this whole redemption thing, honey?" the Queen of Hell inquired, then continued. "I know this dream of yours is very important for you, and I know you want to help sinners, but it just sounds so absurd. Unrealistic," she noted, going on with her speech. "People don't fall to hell without a reason. Honey, I just don't want you to find it out the hard way," Lilith responded, finishing her sentence as her daughter listened to her speech in complete silence. To be honest, Charlie was quite used to this. Someone showing pity to her, or telling her that it is impossible for her to fulfill her dream, was something that she experienced almost on a daily basis. To top it off, she received this kind of treatment from her own parents almost every time she paid them a visit, with her getting the former type of treatment mainly from her mother and the latter kind of approach towards her plan being acquired mostly by her father. Truth be told, she was not angry at her mother for this. In fact, she really appreciated her mother's worry for her. But it still frustrated her a tiny bit that even her own mother didn't believe in her dream and its success. And because of this, and to show everyone that they were wrong about her project, she could never give up her dream of helping sinners become redeemed and getting them into the realm of the Almighty. "I know, Mom, but I can't give up," Charlie declared with determination and seriousness. "My people need my help, and I just can't turn my back on them and leave to die at the end of every year. And that's why," she continued, moving her head and witnessing her mother with a serious look on her face, "no matter how long it takes, I'll show them that they are not worthless and every one of them has something good deep down inside and deserves a second chance. And even if I just manage to convince a single person that there's redemption for them, I will know that I have finally achieved something," the Princess of Hell announced composedly as she looked into the eyes of her female parent, thinking about the two individuals in her life who truly believed in her cause, her loving girlfriend and her young overlord friend. "Are you sure, honey?" Lilith queried a little bit worriedly. "Yes, Mom, I'm sure," Charlie answered decidedly. "All right, do as you wish, honey," the Queen of all of Hell noted with a little bit of worry as she and her daughter observed each other in quietness, while Razzle and Dazzle witnessed the whole scene as they consumed their donuts. With their conversation being done, Charlie moved her away from her mother and went on with reading her book. Meanwhile, her looked at her doing this act in silence. Then, after a few moments of observing her daughter, Lilith, with a little bit saddened expression on her face, decided it was time for her to give her daughter a tiny bit of privacy and leave her to be herself. So, after making this decision in her head, the Queen turned her body around and moved her legs, beginning to slowly get more and more distance from her child with each step she performed. As her mother made her way further and further away from her, the Princess of Hell continued to study her book, almost finishing the chapter about this so-called Indian celebration, when, as she reached the last sentence, her eyes got the attention of a holiday that was mentioned in the chapter, and the book remarked it as somewhat similar to Diwali. The book called this holiday Christmas. Other than this brief mention, the chapter inside this book didn't say anything about this celebration, but this short explanation of this holiday being kind of the same as the main topic of this chapter of the book was enough to grasp Charlie's curiosity and imagination. What was this celebration? What do humans do during this holiday? What do they celebrate on this holiday in the first place? She needed to. No, she had to know. And to her luck, one of her parents, who was one of the oldest beings in the realm of suffering, was in the room. So, she turned her head in the direction of her mother and opened her mouth, letting her question known. Mom? Princess Charlotte started, gaining the attention of her mother, making her move her head towards her direction. Yes, honey, Lilith queried. What is Christmas? The Princess of Hell wondered curiously, widening her mother's eyes with her sudden question. Oh, it's just a silly human holiday, nothing special, the Queen of Hell stated, ensuring her daughter that this human celebration was nothing to fuss about, meanwhile planning to get rid of the book due to it talking about a holiday connected to heaven. Her and her husband's countless amounts of servants had gathered thousands of books from the mortal realm for hundreds of years, with the only rule they had to follow being that they books were not allowed to contain anything related to heaven. But yet, one had a holiday connected to the realm of the Almighty. This was the reason behind her upcoming action of throwing out the book in her own way. Oh, I see, Charlie responded, not satisfied with the answer she received. She had to know more about this celebration, one way or another. And while she was thinking about this, a sudden idea appeared in her head that could serve as a solution to her problem. Since this holiday was a human one, she could just ask Izuku about it. He must have known more about this Christmas. He had to. As she settled her idea inside her mind, she moved her head and looked at the watch on her right arm in order to check what time it was. And when she did this, she shot her eyes a little bit wide by seeing that the time had flown by so fast it was about time for her to leave and go back to the hotel. Realizing that the time of her visit was about to reach its end, she looked away from her watch, closed her book, and stood up from the table, with her mother and her 2 personal guards witnessing her in this act in the process. Oh, you're leaving? Lilith wondered. Yes, sorry for that, Mom. But I need to go back to the hotel, Charlie declared as she pushed the chair she sat on back to the table fully. I don't want to make vaggie for being away for so long, she added as she thought about her loving girlfriend and hoped that she was all right and didn't turn the hotel into nothingness during an argument with Angeldust or Alastor. Oh, it's not a problem at all, honey, the Queen assured. You know you're free to come and leave whenever you want, she stated as she observed her daughter with a smile. Thanks, Mom, Charlie remercied as she began to walk in the direction of her female parent. But when she was about to start this, her movement was interrupted by 2 entities wrapping their arms around her body and embracing her with a hug, making her look down in surprise and witnessed the sight of Razzle and Dazzle hugging her, possessing sad faces in the process. This caused the Princess of Hell to acquire a small smile by seeing her guards not wanting her to leave, making her also a bit upset by the fact that she won't see them for a week. Don't worry guys, I won't be gone for a long time, Charlie ensured, her guards still obtaining that upset look on their faces, causing Charlie to morph her smile into a sweet, apologetic one. Hey, I promise you that next time I come to a visit and I'm about to leave, I'll let you come and stay with me at the hotel for the few days, okay? Princess Charlotte suggested, hoping that with her idea, she could bring back to joyful, original selves of her and her parents' personal guards. Thankfully, her plan worked, with Razzle and Dazzle vanishing their upside-down smiles into real, delighted ones and hugging their princess's body closer to themselves, with Charlie doing the same act as them. Their adorable scene continued for around a few more seconds, when the cough of the Queen of Hell interrupted their act, making all 3 of them look at her. Anyway, Lilith coughed, starting her speech as Razzle and Dazzle released their grip on Charlie's body. I will go and get the limousine for you. In the meantime, do whatever you desire, honey, she stated. No, Mom, you don't need to, the Princess of Hell opposed, then continued. I will handle it, she announced as she walked towards her mother. As you wish, honey, Lilith replied as her daughter got to her and embraced her with a hug, taking her by surprise. However, this surprise disappeared almost instantly, with the Queen of all of Hell wrapping her own arms around her daughter's body as well, returning the kind gesture. I love you, Mom, Charlie declared calmly and nicely as she hugged her female parent. I love you too, honey, Lilith responded, assuring her daughter that she loved her too. Meanwhile, Razzle and Dazzle witnessed the wholesome situation delightfully as they munched on their donuts. After a few seconds, both royals released their grip from each other's bodies, freeing themselves from the hug. Then, Princess Charlotte moved her legs and continued her journey towards the exit of the main library, which played the part of it being the room entrance as well, while turning her head and waving at her mother and her guards. "Bye, Mom." "Bye, Razzle and Dazzle." Charlie waved as she was about to arrive at the majestic dark red-colored wooden doors of the main library. "Tell Dad I said hi," she requested from her mother while she grabbed one of the handles of the exit of the library and pushed it downwards. "I will," Lilith assured, waving at her daughter as she opened one of the doors wide enough for her to exit the room, while Razzle and Dazzle also waved at their princess, saying goodbye to her. With this, the Princess of Hell stepped out of the main library, closing the door behind her back. After she left, Razzle and Dazzle put every book back in their place, with the exception of the one book the Queen ordered them not to take back. Once the two guards gathered as many books as they could into their hands, Lilith grabbed the book in particular, and by using a bit of her demonic strength and abilities, she incinerated the book in a second, doing this with absolute disgust due to it mentioning a celebration that was really special for heaven. After that, she walked away from the ashes of the book, which were on the floor, and went deeper inside the library, minding her own business. And as all of these events occurred, Charlie walked through the giant main hall of her family's palace gleefully, knowing that within a few days she would know more about this Christmas from her young Cambion friend. As usual, the remaining 2 days until the weekend passed by so quickly that neither Charlie nor everyone else in the hotel noticed it, thus making them reach the morning of a Saturday, one day before Christmas, which, of course, Charlie didn't have knowledge of. On that Saturday morning, every member of the main cast was present in the lobby area of the hotel, with the exception of Sirpentious, who was most certainly inside his airship with his egg boy minions and was in the middle of drawing the blueprints of a wheeled cannon-like weapon that could make his pupils' jaw drop by how magnificent it was, and Angeldust, who was probably at the pawn studio of a certain lustful moth-based, abusive, male overlord and was likely making his living by doing the type of work that on the surface he enjoyed, but deep down, hated with his very soul, mostly thanks to the behavior of the overlord he was working to. The demons who were in the lobby were doing the usual act they did in the morning. Charlie and Vaggie were chatting with Alastor about the state of the hotel and were discussing the radio show that her young overlord friend recently suggested holding in order to help her advertise her rehabilitation center more easily and try to get its existence and what the hotel offered to a larger audience. Mostly the demons in the cannibal colony due to the colony being stuck in between the 190s and 1930s technologically, which the Princess of Hell was really grateful for, and her girlfriend was not fond of due to it being the idea of the son of the radio demon in the first place. Niffty was cleaning the furniture in the lobby with her duster, while Husk was standing behind the bar counter of the caviar bar, holding a wine glass in his left hand and polishing it with a red-colored towelette in his right hand, and Kiki was lying and sleeping peacefully on the bar counter, not disturbing the job of the anthropomorphic cat sinner. It looked like these acts would continue for a while, when suddenly, a red-colored, circle-shaped portal appeared and opened in the middle of the lobby, causing everyone to focus their attention on it, all of them knowing who was about to step out of it, much to Vaggie's frustration and Charlie's, Alastor's, and Nifty's delight. Out of the portal, the 14-year-old Izukumidoriya stepped out, wearing the same style and type of clothes his father gave him on the day they first met, although in a larger size to fit his teenager body. Once he got out of the portal fully, Shadow came out of his hiding place and showed his presence to everyone while the portal closed itself without hesitation, vanishing from sight. After the portal closed, with his well-known broad smile full of yellow-colored, sharp teeth, the radio demon stopped his conversation with the Princess of Hell and her girlfriend, and began to walk towards his son, attempting to welcome him into the hotel once again, just like on every Saturday morning. "My dear boy," Alastor greeted as he approached our protagonist, who turned his head in the direction of his father once he heard his voice, and also formed a smile on his face by seeing his demonic parent. "Hi, Dad," Izuku said happily, observing his father as he got closer and closer to him with every step. "It is delightful for me to see you again, truly it is," the cannibalistic serial killer stated, arriving next to his son. "Tell me, have you prepared yourself for today's physical practice?" he inquired from him. "Yes, Dad," our young overlord declared with both excitement and determination. "Splendid. the radio demon announced, then continued. Because today, we are going to enhance the little shadow control ability of yours. I hope you're excited. Oh, can I join too? The little cockroach female demon wondered with enthusiasm. Of course, you can, my dear Nifty. In fact, I was about to ask for your aid for this certain type of practice, Alastor answered, allowing his servant friend to be a part of their group. Really? The cleaning-addicted female sinner wondered excitedly. Yay! She cheered with delight. Hi, Auntie, Izuku told to his aunt, saying hi to her. Hi, Izuku, Nifty welcomed, greeting her nephew with a sweet smile. Care to join us, my dear Husker? The radio-loving overlord inquired, looking at his other servant friend, with our dear hero, his shadowy companion, and his aunt sharing the radio demon in this act. The more of us come, the more we could help my dear boy with his training. Since I don't have a fucking choice, I need to come whether I want or not. Husk replied grumpily as he put down the wine glass and the red towelette on the bar counter and stepped out from behind the counter, walking to our group and joining them, thus becoming their next member. I have to help the kid either way. Then it's settled, Alastor declared joyfully. We shall go outside and assist my dear boy in his training together, he stated, then went on with his speech. Is that good for you, my boy? He queried from his son as he witnessed him. Yes, Dad, it's fine. Our young Cambion responded nicely. Wonderful, the radio demon announced. Then let us go inside and begin your training, he expressed, turning his body in the direction of the hallway that would lead him to the entrance of the backyard of the hotel. Whatever, the anthropomorphic cat sinner remarked with boredom as he followed his boss, then continued. But after ya are finished with your voodoo bullshit, the kid's gonna train with me, he demanded. As you wish, Husker, the cannibalistic serial killer said, accepting his servant's friend's demand while Izuku, Shadow, and Nifty also followed him, not wanting to become separated from the group. As they began their journey towards the backyard of the Happy Hotel, both Vaggie and Charlie just watched their leave with their visionary organs, with the former doing it with relief, knowing that she wouldn't see our dear hero until the afternoon of the day, and the latter performing this act in silence, thinking about whether she should ask her young overlord friend about this Christmas celebration. Of course, she didn't intend to interrupt his training that was about to start, but there was still an opportunity for her to ask her question before this practice of his would really begin. So, after making her choice of actions in this situation, he moved her legs and proceeded to approach her friend, much to her girlfriend's surprise and a little bit of anger after she realized who she was going to walk up to. Izuku? The Princess of Hell started, revealing her presence to her young Cambion friend, making not only him but also the rest of the group turn their heads in her direction. Oh, hi, Charlie, Izuku greeted, saying hi to his royal friend. Hi. Princess Charlotte welcomed, greeting her friend. Listen, is sorry to interrupt your training, but... She apologized, then went on with her speech. Do you have a minute? She queried as she got to our protagonist. Of course, Izuku answered nicely. It seems to me that you're going to have some chat, so I won't bother you. Alastor stated as he placed his right hand on his son's left shoulder, then continued. Talk with the princess as long as you desire, my boy, he declared with his wide, iconic smile. Thank you, Dad, our dear hero remercied smilingly, being grateful for his father's kindness. You're welcome, my boy, the radio demon replied, then removed his hand from his son's shoulder, turned around, and went on with his journey in the direction of the backyard of the hotel, while accompanied by his only child's aunt and uncle, leaving his son and his son's shadowy friend with the Princess of Hell. Come after us once you have finished your little chat. Okay, Dad, Izuku exclaimed joyfully. I will, he said as he observed his father and other two demonic relatives leave and go towards the entrance of the backyard. After his father, aunt, and uncle disappeared from his sight, our protagonist turned his head back to its original form and set his upon on his royal friend, with Shadow doing the same. So, what did you want to ask from me, Charlie? Izuku questioned as he and his shadowy companion looked at Princess Charlotte, with the former doing it with a smile on his face. Well, while I was reading a book at my home, I came across a human celebration called Christmas, and since the book didn't say anything more about it, I was thinking that you could explain to me what exactly it is. Charlie explained. Can you do that for me? She requested kindly. Sure, Izuku responded nicely, offering his help to answer his friend's question and beginning to explain the definition of Christmas. Christmas is a holiday when people celebrate the birth of the Son of God, Jesus, and decorate pine trees, and give gifts to each other to show how much they care about each other and to honor Christ, he explained, surprising Charlie with his explanation. Really? Princess Charlotte quizzed in surprise by hearing what Christmas was. I never thought it would be like that. Thank you, Izuku, she remercied. You're welcome, Charlie, our young overlord said, happy to help his royal friend with anything she needed. But after he told this sentence of his to her, as he thought about her inquiry, he suddenly realized what exactly she asked from him, making him widen his eyes in shock due to the information he received by thinking about the type of her query. Wait, you never heard of Christmas before? He wondered in pure shock. No, I didn't. The Princess of Hell replied causally, shocking her young Cambion friend even more with her answer. The only holiday in hell that's similar to it is Krampus Day, when Krampus comes and gives present. But this celebration is mostly celebrated by the imps and other hellborns. She clarified in detail as her friend listened to her words, with him already knowing about Krampus and his purpose in hell thanks to his best imp friend, Mello, who talked about Krampus on the day of a certain incident. So, you never celebrated it? Our dear hero questioned in total shock. No, never. Charlie answered with a relaxed, casual tone, having no clue if it was an issue that she never celebrated Christmas or not. Oh, I see. Our protagonist puzzled, still processing the fact he heard in shock, which didn't unnoticed by his royal friend. Is that a problem? I never heard of it, Charlie queried with worry. No, it's not, Izuku protested. I'm just a little bit surprised you didn't know about Christmas, that's all, he clarified, not wanting to make his friend more anxious. Oh, okay, Princess Charlotte remarked, then turned her body around, moved her legs, and began to walk back to her girlfriend, who just witnessed their whole conversation from afar in silence. Thank you again, Izuku, she remercied, thanking for Izuku's aid as she observed him with her eyes and got closer to her girlfriend with each step. You're welcome, Izuku said as he witnessed Charlie join back to her girlfriend's company and walk away with her girlfriend in the opposite direction his demonic parent and relatives went, entering another hallway and beginning a conversation with Vaggie as they went probably towards their room, thus vanishing from the sight of our young overlord's visionary organs and leaving him all alone in the lobby area. After his royal friend left, our dear hero also moved his body around, and with Shadow by his side, he proceeded to run in the direction of his father, aunt, and uncle, trying to get to their position as fast as he could. Meanwhile, as he performed this act, an army of thoughts appeared in his mind about Charlie's former experiences, or rather lack of experiences with Christmas. How did she not know what Christmas was? Of course, the answer was kinda obvious, with the place she grew up literally being hell, the home of all demons and sinners, and Christmas being a celebration connected to heaven due to Jesus being the Son of the Almighty. But it still baffled that the princess of all of hell, who was the daughter of the king and queen of hell, who were, as far as Izuku was informed, among the most powerful and most ancient entities in the realm of suffering, making Izuku think they could have at least tell some things to their daughters about humans and their traditions. As he thought about this, after around 2 minutes, thanks to his running, he finally got the sight of his father, aunt, and uncle walking down the hallway in the direction of the entrance of the backyard of the hotel, causing him to unlock his mouth in order to get their attention. I'm here, Izuku exclaimed as he rushed towards his demonic family members, making all 3 of them look behind their backs once their auditory organs picked up his shout. My dear boy, you're back, Alastor announced in delight as he observed his child and his shadowy friend reach their position and got next to him, stopping in his tracks, with Niffty and Husk performing the same act. Tell me, did you enjoy the little chit-chat of yours with the princess? Yes, Dad, I did, our young overlord replied joyfully, hiding his sadness towards Charlie for her never experiencing Christmas in her entire life. I'm glad to hear that, the radio demon remarked with his iconic grin, then went on with his speech. Now, let us continue our journey to the backyard to begin your training at last, he declared. Okay, Dad, our protagonist responded. Then he, his shadowy companion, and the rest of the group proceeded to carry on with their journey towards the direction of the backyard of the hotel. As they went on with their way, Izuku couldn't help it, but he was just able to make himself stop thinking about Charlie and her situation regarding Christmas and to feel bad for him being incapable of doing anything about it, making his flatten his ears and tail a tiny bit. However, this upsetness of his didn't go under the radar of his demonic parent, causing him to open his mouth full of yellow-colored, sharp teeth and let his concern known. "What's the matter, my boy?" Alastor wondered, observing his son. "You seem distracted." "What?" Izuku baffled, then suddenly realized what his father asked. "Oh, nothing, Dad." "Are you certain, my boy?" the radio-loving overlord questioned. "Because your ears and tail say otherwise," he pointed out, thus resulting in his son acknowledging the fact that his cover had fallen. "Well, it's just that Charlie asked me about what Christmas is, and she told me that she had never celebrated it," our dear hero revealed, not surprising his father with his explanation. "That's not surprising," Alastor noted, then continued. "Hell is not particularly the perfect place for holy holidays to be held," he remarked, pointing out this fact to his son. "I know, Dad, but I just wish that I could at least do something about it," Izuku expressed in sadness, crossing his arms and looking at the dark red-colored floor as he walked in the direction of the backyard, starting to accept the fact that there was no solution for Charlie's not rather close connection to Christmas to be changed, while his father moved his head away from him and observed the hallway as they got closer and closer to their destination. But as Izuku thought about this, an idea appeared inside his mind. An idea that not only was perfect for the time of the year, but it could also solve the Princess of Hell's situation about Christmas, thus making her experience Christmas for the first time. But it was also suitable for everyone in the hotel to show her their gratitude for how hard she worked for everyone's sake. So, with his idea being complete in his head, Izuku opened his mouth and spoke up, ending his walk. "Wait," Izuku started, causing every member of the group to stop in their tracks and set their eyes upon our young champion. "I know this will sound strange, but what if we make a surprise Christmas party for Charlie?" he suggested as he witnessed his demonic relatives with his visionary organs, being a little bit nervous about their opinion regarding his idea. "A Christmas party in hell?" the radio demon repeated as he thought about the concept. "I have to admit, that is quite a unique and original idea, my boy," he noted. "Really?" our protagonist questioned in happiness after hearing his father's remark, causing him to straighten his ears and tail in response. "Sure," Alastor replied joyfully. "So, are you in, Dad?" Izuku inquired a bit anxiously. "Of course, my boy," the radio-loving overlord answered in delight, resulting in his boy becoming relieved and joyful due to knowing he had his support. "I'm in too," Niffty announced, joining her nephew's plan. "And you, my dear Husker?" the cannibalistic serial killer inquired from the anthropomorphic feline demon, observing him with his eyes, with Izuku, Niffty, and Shadow performing the same act. "I don't really care about this shit," Husk responded grumpily. "Do whatever you want, kid," he stated, thus signaling his nephew that he also supported his idea in his own special way, with Izuku getting his uncle's message due to being used to his usual behavior. "Thank you, guys," Izuku thanked with gratefulness for his demonic relative's helpfulness. "You're welcome, my boy," Alastor said, witnessing his only child with his broad smile. "Now, let us discuss and plan this surprise Christmas celebration in more detail after you have finished your training today. Is that all right for you, my boy?" "Yes, Dad, it's good," Izuku replied delightfully, knowing that he had the aid of his hellish family members. With this, our young overlord, his shadowy friend, his father, his aunt, and his uncle went on with their journey towards the entrance of the backyard of the princess's rehabilitation center, which they reached shortly after they ended their conversation. Then, after they got out of the building, they finally began our protagonist's training on that day, with his father's training being the first to be held, just they discussed it. Once his training not only with his father, but with his uncle and aunt as well, with our dear hero enhancing his physical strength further outside the hotel during the former type of practice, and learning how to resuscitate someone by using the cardiopulmonary method in his room throughout the latter kind of training. Izuku took off his clothes, had a shower, put on his pajamas that he stored inside the dark red wooden wardrobe which was in his room, pulled his chair out, sat down to his table, and began to plan the surprise Christmas party for his royal, thinking about where it should be kept and which task he should give to who in the hotel, Meanwhile, Shadow just observed his master doing this in silence and with curiosity. After a few hours, the plan was complete, with Izuku planning to present to the residents of the hotel the next day, being a tiny bit anxious for their thoughts on his idea. Then, he got into his bed, turned off the light that the small lamp emitted next to his bed, covered his body with his blanket, and fell asleep, with his shadowy helper changing into his shadow form, thus vanishing from sight and protecting his master in his sleep from anything that could hurt him. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author maxx69 on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.